What if Harry's accidental magic created a sentient shadow that eliminated every threat? Chapter 1. The shadow awakens. Harry Potter crouched in the dark confines of his cupboard under the stairs, knees pulled tight against his chest. His Uncle Vernon's shouting still echoed through the house, rattling the small collection of broken toy soldiers Harry had salvaged from Dudley's trash. Boy! No meals for 3 days. That'll teach you to make Dudley look bad. Harry hadn't meant to finish the math test before his cousin. He certainly hadn't meant to get all the answers right while Dudley failed spectacularly. But intentions didn't matter in the Dursley household. Results did. And the result was always the same: Harry punished for existing. "It's not fair," Harry whispered into the darkness, his stomach already cramping with hunger. That's when he first noticed it. The darkness in the corner of his cupboard seemed deeper somehow. Like the shadows were listening. He reached out a hesitant hand, expecting to touch the wall, but the darkness felt cool against his fingertips, almost like silk. "Hello?" Harry whispered. The darkness rippled in response. Harry jerked his hand back, heart pounding. He blinked hard, sure he was seeing things from hunger or exhaustion. When he opened his eyes, the shadow looked normal again. Just a regular shadow in a regular cupboard belonging to a very irregular boy. Sleep eventually claimed him, dreams filled with swirling darkness that whispered comfort instead of threats. The next morning, Aunt Petunia rapped sharply on his door. "Up! Get up and cook breakfast. Don't you dare let the bacon burn." Harry dragged himself from the cot, his stomach growling painfully. 3 days without food stretched before him like an eternity. As he reached for the doorknob, something odd caught his attention. A small paper bag sat on the floor of his cupboard, definitely not there when he'd gone to sleep. Inside, he found an apple, a slightly squashed sandwich, and a chocolate bar. Food. Real food that hadn't come from the Dursleys. Harry wolfed down the sandwich and apple, saving the chocolate for later. Where had they come from? Had someone broken in just to leave him food? It didn't make sense. The mystery deepened 2 days later. Harry was weeding the garden under the merciless summer sun while Dudley sat in the shade, slurping a popsicle and taunting him. "Hey, freak!" Dudley called. "Bet you're hungry, huh? Want a taste?" He waved the popsicle in Harry's direction before dramatically licking it. Harry ignored him, focusing on pulling a particularly stubborn dandelion. "I'm talking to you." Dudley stood, his substantial weight making the garden chair groan in relief. He lumbered over, face twisted in the familiar expression that meant Harry was about to get hurt. That's when it happened. Dudley's shadow, which should have been stretched out behind him in the afternoon sun, suddenly darkened and rippled. It shot forward like spilled ink, wrapping around Dudley's ankles. Dudley went down hard, face planting into the freshly turned soil of Petunia's prized flower bed. "Moo-um," he wailed, spitting dirt. "Harry pushed me." Harry hadn't moved an inch. He stared at Dudley's shadow, which now looked perfectly normal stretched out behind the boy's sprawled form. Had he imagined it? "I didn't touch him," Harry said when Petunia came running. "I was over here the whole time." "Liar!" Petunia shrieked, yanking Harry up by the arm. "Back to your cupboard. Wait until Vernon hears about this." As she dragged him inside, Harry glanced back at the garden. For just a second, he thought he saw his own shadow wave at him, even though his arms hung limply at his sides. That night, locked in his cupboard and dreading Uncle Vernon's return, Harry whispered into the darkness. "Was that you? In the garden?" The shadows gathered in the corner of the cupboard, darker than the surrounding darkness. They swirled like water circling a drain, then rose up to form a vaguely humanoid shape, nodding once. Harry's breath caught. "You're real. What are you?" The shadow extended a tendril, touching Harry's chest right above his heart, then swept outward to encompass the whole cupboard. "You're part of me. My shadow?" Another nod. "Can you talk?" The shadow shape shook its head, then pointed to Harry, then back to itself. We can communicate, though. You understand me. The shadow bobbed enthusiastically. And you tripped Dudley. You brought me food. More nodding. A strange feeling welled up in Harry's chest, something warm and unfamiliar. Someone or something was on his side. For the first time in his life, he wasn't completely alone. The front door slammed, and Vernon's heavy footsteps shook the hallway. Where's the boy? His uncle bellowed. The shadow flattened against the wall, then slowly raised what appeared to be a finger to where its mouth would be, if it had one. Our secret, Harry whispered, and the shadow melted back into ordinary darkness just as the cupboard door was yanked open. Vernon filled the doorway, face purple with rage. I heard what you did to Dudley, boy. Think you're clever, do you? Harry cringed back, raising his arms instinctively. Vernon grabbed him by the collar, dragging him out. I've had enough of your freakishness. You'll learn respect if it's the last thing I do. Vernon raised his hand, and Harry closed his eyes, bracing for the blow. But it never came. A strangled gasp made Harry open his eyes. Vernon stood frozen, his raised hand enveloped in darkness that seemed to have risen up from the floor. The shadow stretched up like a vine, holding Vernon's arm in place. What the devil? Vernon's eyes bulged. He tried to pull away, but the shadow held firm. More darkness gathered behind Vernon, forming a vaguely human-shaped silhouette that was somehow darker than the surrounding shadows. It had no features, just an impression of a head and shoulders, but its message was clear, it was protecting Harry. Let go. Vernon bellowed, struggling against the shadowy restraint. What is this freakish? The shadow released him so suddenly that Vernon stumbled backward, nearly falling. You. Vernon pointed a shaking finger at Harry. You did this. You're freakish. I didn't do anything, Harry said, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. The shadow was his, somehow, but he hadn't consciously controlled it. Vernon's face cycled through shades of purple and red. Back in the cupboard. No meals for a week. And if I see any more of this unnaturalness. He slammed the door, throwing the locks with shaking hands. Through the vent, Harry heard him mutter to Petunia, the boy's getting worse. Those freaks will come for him soon, mark my words. In the darkness of the cupboard, Harry's shadow friend reformed, hovering anxiously. Thank you, Harry whispered. But be careful. If they find out about you. He didn't need to finish the thought. The Dursleys already hated anything abnormal. A living shadow would send them over the edge. The shadow nodded, then extended a tendril to touch Harry's cheek in what felt like a gesture of affection. We need a name for you, Harry decided. I can't just call you Shadow, can I? The darkness rippled in what might have been a shrug. How about Umbra? I learned that in school. It means shadow in Latin. The shadow, Umbra, made a motion like it was considering, then nodded approval. Umbra it is, Harry said, smiling for the first time in days. I think we're going to be good friends, Umbra. Over the next few weeks, Harry and Umbra developed a system. During the day, Umbra would stay perfectly normal, indistinguishable from Harry's regular shadow. But at night, or when they were alone, Umbra would detach and move independently. Harry quickly discovered Umbra's abilities. The shadow could slip under doors and through the smallest cracks, exploring the house while Harry remained locked in the cupboard. Umbra couldn't carry large objects, but small things like food or pencils could be transported within its darkness. Most importantly, Umbra seemed to instinctively recognize threats to Harry. Whenever Dudley and his gang appeared for Harry hunting, Umbra would subtly trip them or create disorienting patches of darkness that gave Harry time to escape. One evening, after a particularly close call where Umbra had saved Harry from a beating by making Dudley's shoelaces tie themselves together, Harry lay on his cot talking quietly to his shadow friend. I don't understand what you are, he admitted. But I'm really glad you're here. Umbra formed a shape like a question mark. No, I don't know why weird things happen around me either, Harry sighed. Aunt Petunia says it's because I'm a freak. That my parents were freaks too. At the mention of Harry's parents, Umbra seemed to grow agitated, swirling faster. Did you know them? Harry asked, sitting up straight. Umbra made a so motion with a tendril. That's impossible. They died when I was a baby. In a car crash. Even as he said it, Harry realized how little he actually knew about his parents. The Dursleys refused to speak of them except to criticize. Umbra formed what appeared to be a jagged lightning bolt, then pointed at Harry's forehead where his scar was. My scar. What about it? Umbra's movements grew more frustrated, clearly trying to communicate something beyond its capabilities. I wish you could talk, Harry said. There's so much I want to know. The shadow settled, draping itself over Harry's shoulders like a comforting blanket. The message was clear enough: patience. They would figure it out together. Harry's 10th birthday came and went without acknowledgement from the Dursleys. Umbra, however, surprised him by swiping a cupcake from the kitchen and arranging small stones in the garden to spell, Happy Birthday. Life settled into a strange routine. School resumed, and Harry found himself doing better than before. With Umbra's help sneaking books from the school library into his cupboard, he could read and study even when locked away. The shadow would even help with his homework, pointing out mistakes by darkening incorrect answers. But as Harry's confidence grew, so did the Dursleys' unease. They noticed the change in him, the way he no longer flinched at every raised voice, how he sometimes smiled at nothing they could see. The boy's up to something, Vernon would mutter. Plotting. He wasn't entirely wrong. With Umbra's help, Harry had begun to test boundaries. When sent to his cupboard without dinner, Umbra would steal food. When locked in, Umbra could unlock the door from the outside. Small rebellions, but they gave Harry a taste of freedom he'd never experienced. The first real test of their partnership came nearly a year after Umbra first appeared. Harry sat in the school library during lunch, hiding from Dudley's gang. Umbra, as always, behaved like a normal shadow, stretching out beneath him on the library floor. He was deeply engrossed in a book about mythology when a shadow not his own fell across the page. Well, look who's here. Four Eyes Potter, all alone. Malcolm, one of Dudley's friends, stood over him with a nasty grin. Dudley's looking for you. Said you cheated on the math test. I didn't cheat, Harry said, closing his book. I studied. Yeah, right. Malcolm grabbed Harry's backpack. Let's see what you've got in here, cheater. Harry reached for his bag, but Malcolm shoved him hard. He stumbled backward, knocking over a chair with a crash that echoed through the quiet library. What's going on here? The librarian appeared from behind a bookshelf, frowning severely. Potter attacked me. Malcolm said quickly. I was just returning a book and he went mental. That's not true. Harry protested, but he could see from the librarian's face that she'd already decided who the troublemaker was. Mr. Potter, I expect better behavior in my library, she said sternly. Out, now, before I call the headmaster. As Harry gathered his things, he noticed Umbra stretching out from beneath his feet, reaching toward Malcolm with tendrils of darkness. No, he whispered. Not here. Umbra hesitated, then retracted, once again becoming just an ordinary shadow. Harry left the library, Malcolm's laughter following him. He ducked into an empty classroom, breathing hard. You can't just attack people in public, he told Umbra once they were alone. Someone will see. Umbra rose up from the floor, forming a shape that somehow conveyed indignation. I know he was being a jerk, but... Harry ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair. We need to be careful. If people find out about you, they might take you away from me. The shadow drooped, clearly disappointed but understanding. We need rules, Harry decided. You can only protect me if I'm in real danger. And only when no one's watching. Umbra made a gesture like it was thinking, then offered what looked like a shadowy handshake. A deal. Harry smiled, reaching out to touch the darkness. Deal. Of course, rules were made to be tested. And that test came sooner than either of them expected. The next day, Harry found himself cornered in the school bathroom by Dudley and his entire gang. 6 against 1. Thought you could make me look stupid, did you? Dudley cracked his knuckles. Think you're so clever with your perfect test scores. Harry backed up until he hit the wall. Come on, Dudley. I'm your cousin. You're a freak, Dudley spat. And freaks get what they deserve. As Piers Polkiss held Harry's arms behind his back, Dudley drew back his fist. Harry closed his eyes, bracing for impact. The lights in the bathroom flickered, then went out completely. Total darkness descended, followed by confused shouts from Dudley's gang. Harry felt Piers' grip loosen in surprise, and he pulled free, pressing himself against the wall. What's happening? Who turned off the lights? I can't see. In the pitch darkness, Harry could somehow still see Umbra moving, no longer attached to him but swirling around the bathroom like a tornado of deeper blackness. The shadow touched each of the bullies in turn, and with each touch came a yelp of fear. Something grabbed me. It's cold. Let's get out of here. The bathroom door banged open, letting in light from the hallway as Dudley's gang stampeded out, screaming about ghosts. Only Dudley remained, frozen in terror as Umbra rose up before him, forming a vaguely humanoid shape that seemed to stare him down. Peapotter. Dudley squeaked. Call it off. Harry stepped forward. This had gone far enough. Umbra, that's enough. He's leaving. The shadow reluctantly backed away, allowing Dudley to edge toward the door. What is that thing? Dudley asked, his voice unusually high. My friend, Harry said simply. And you should probably remember that next time you feel like hitting me. Dudley fled, and the bathroom lights flickered back on. Umbra melted back to the floor, once again appearing as nothing more than Harry's ordinary shadow. Thanks, Harry whispered. But that was cutting it close. Someone could have seen you. Umbra made a dismissive gesture, clearly pleased with itself. The incident in the bathroom changed things between Harry and Dudley. His cousin still insulted him, still complained to his parents about Harry's freakishness, but he kept a wary distance. No more Harry hunting. No more physical bullying. The Dursleys noticed the change. They saw how Dudley flinched when Harry moved too quickly, how their son checked the corners of rooms before entering if Harry was inside. They didn't understand it, but it frightened them. The boy's doing something to Dudley, Petunia insisted one night. Harry, supposedly asleep in his cupboard, listened through the door that Umbra had unlocked. Some of that, unnaturalness. We've kept it stamped down, Vernon argued, though he sounded uncertain. He wouldn't dare. He's getting older, Petunia hissed. They get worse as they get older. Remember what happened to my sister? That caught Harry's attention. They never spoke of his mother. We'll send him to Stonewall High, Vernon decided. Far away from Dudley. That'll sort him out. Harry retreated to his cot as their conversation moved on to more mundane matters. Umbra formed a question mark. I don't know what they mean about my mother, Harry whispered. They never talk about her. Umbra seemed agitated, swirling around the small space. Do you know something? Harry asked. About my parents? The shadow made a frustrated motion, clearly struggling to communicate something complex. It's okay, Harry soothed. We'll figure it out someday. But, someday, arrived sooner than he expected. The letter came on a completely ordinary Tuesday, dropping through the mail slot with the Morning Post. Harry, sent to collect the mail as usual, nearly missed it among the bills and magazines. But there it was, a heavy envelope of yellowish parchment addressed in emerald green ink to Mr. H. Potter the cupboard under the stairs 4, Privet Drive little whinging Surrey. Harry stared at it in shock. No one had ever written to him before. And how did they know he slept in a cupboard? Umbra, still behaving like a normal shadow in the daylight, gave an almost imperceptible tug toward Harry's cupboard, a suggestion to hide the letter. But before Harry could react, Dudley came waddling into the hallway. "Dad! Dad, Harry's got something." What followed was chaos. Vernon seized the letter, went pale upon reading the address, then purple upon seeing the wax seal. The letter was burned, and Harry was relocated to Dudley's second bedroom, a surprising development that would have thrilled him under different circumstances. But Harry couldn't stop thinking about the letter. Who wanted to contact him so badly? What was Vernon trying to hide? "We need to get the next one," Harry told Umbra that night in his new bedroom. "Before they can take it." The shadow nodded eagerly. They got their chance the very next morning. Umbra, who had taken to patrolling the house at night, alerted Harry before dawn that more letters had arrived, slipped under the door, through the mail slot, even through the small bathroom window. Harry crept downstairs while the Dursleys still slept and snatched one of the identical envelopes. Back in the safety of his new bedroom, with Umbra keeping watch at the door, Harry finally broke the wax seal and read, "Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confeet, of Wizards, Dear Mr. Potter. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress." Harry read the letter 3 times, his mind racing. Witchcraft. Wizardry. It had to be a joke. Yet, it would explain so much. The strange occurrences throughout his life. His ability to speak with Umbra. The Dursleys' fear of his freakishness. Umbra was practically dancing around the room with excitement, clearly unsurprised by the letter's contents. "You knew," Harry accused, though he couldn't help smiling at the shadow's antics. "You knew I was a wizard." Umbra nodded vigorously. "And my parents? Were they magical too?" Another enthusiastic nod. "That's why the Dursleys hate me. Why they call me a freak." It wasn't a question, but Umbra confirmed it anyway. Harry sat on the edge of the bed, mind reeling with possibilities. A school for people like him. A place where Umbra wouldn't have to hide. A chance to learn about his parents. "We have to go," he decided. "But how do I send an owl? And how do I even get to this place?" As if in answer to his questions, a tremendous boom shook the house, startling Harry so badly he dropped the letter. Someone was knocking at the door. The commotion that followed would change Harry's life forever. A giant of a man named Hagrid burst into the Dursleys' living room, handed Harry a slightly squashed birthday cake, and confirmed everything the letter had implied. Harry was indeed a wizard, his parents were magical, and he was famous in the wizarding world for surviving an attack that had killed them. Not a car crash at all. A lie, like so much the Dursleys had told him. Throughout Hagrid's explanation, Umbra remained perfectly still, behaving like an ordinary shadow. But Harry could sense its attention, its excitement. When Hagrid finally paused for breath after explaining about Voldemort and Harry's scar, Harry took his chance. "Hagrid, are there such things as, living shadows in the wizarding world?" Hagrid looked puzzled. "Living shadows? Well, there's shadow creatures in the deeper forests. Shy things, mostly. Why d'ya ask?" "Just curious," Harry said quickly. "I read about them somewhere." Hagrid accepted this with a nod, launching into plans for their trip to buy Harry's school supplies the next day. But Harry's mind was racing. If Hagrid, who clearly knew a lot about magical creatures, didn't immediately recognize what Umbra might be, perhaps his shadow friend was something rare or unusual even in the magical world. That night, Alone in Dudley's second bedroom while Hagrid snored on the sofa downstairs, Harry had a long conversation with Umbra. "I don't understand," he whispered. "If I've been a wizard all along, where did you come from? Are you a wizard thing?" Umbra made a so gesture, then pointed to Harry's heart, then to itself. "You're part of me, but not just because I'm a wizard." Harry guessed. The shadow nodded, then mimicked the jagged shape of Harry's scar again before pointing to itself. "My scar, the night my parents died, that's when you were created?" Another nod, more emphatic this time. "But you've only been able to move on your own for about a year." Umbra spread its tendrils in what seemed like a shrug, then formed a shape like a small child growing taller. "You needed time to grow. To develop." Confirmation. Harry lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. "So you're magic, but a special kind. Connected to whatever happened when Voldemort tried to kill me." Umbra settled beside him, a comforting presence in the darkness. "Do you think there are others like you at Hogwarts? Other wizards with shadow friends?" The shadow didn't respond immediately, seeming to consider the question. Finally, it shook its head slowly. "Just me, huh?" Harry smiled slightly. "Figures. Can't ever be normal, can I?" Umbra gently nudged his arm, as if to say that normal was overrated anyway. "You're right," Harry yawned. "Who needs normal when I've got you? But listen, when we're around other wizards, you have to be extra careful. At least until we figure out if this is, a regular wizard thing." Umbra nodded solemnly, then settled down, becoming a regular shadow once more as Harry drifted off to sleep. The next day brought wonders beyond Harry's wildest dreams. Diagon Alley burst into Harry's life in an explosion of color, noise, and magic. Everywhere he looked, there was something new and incredible to discover. Gringotts with its goblin bankers and Harry's unexpected inheritance. Ollivanders, where Harry found his wand, or rather, where the wand found him. Madame Malkin's, where he encountered a pale, drawling boy who reminded him uncomfortably of a more refined Dudley. Throughout it all, Umbra remained the perfect ordinary shadow, though Harry could sense its fascination with everything around them. Only once did it act independently, when the wand-maker, Mr. Ollivander, came too close while describing the wand that had given Harry his scar. Umbra had darkened noticeably, causing the old man to step back with a puzzled expression. "Curious indeed," Ollivander had murmured, his silvery eyes flicking to the shadow at Harry's feet, then back to Harry's face. For one heart-stopping moment, Harry thought the wand-maker would comment on Umbra. But he merely continued his cryptic comments about Harry's wand being the brother to Voldemort's. By the time they returned to Privet Drive, Harry's head was swimming with new information. Hagrid had let slip that the forbidden third-floor corridor at Hogwarts was guarding something, that Voldemort might not be as dead as everyone believed, and that Harry was somewhat of a celebrity in the wizarding world. Just one more month with the Dursleys, Harry told Umbra that night as they looked through his new schoolbooks. "Then we'll be at Hogwarts." Umbra formed a question mark. "I'm nervous too," Harry admitted. "What if I'm no good at magic? Everyone expects me to be amazing." The shadow patted his shoulder reassuringly. "At least I've got you. My own secret weapon." Harry grinned, then sobered. "But seriously, we need to be careful at Hogwarts. At least until we figure out if you're normal for a wizard." Umbra nodded gravely, then pointed to Harry's new copy of Hogwarts, a History. "Good idea. Maybe there's something in here about living shadows." The remaining month at Privet Drive passed in a strange limbo. The Dursleys, terrified after Hagrid's visit, and Dudley's new pigtail, largely left Harry alone. He spent most of his time reading his new books and talking with Umbra, who seemed fascinated by the moving pictures in the magical texts. They found nothing about living shadows in any of Harry's schoolbooks, which both relieved and concerned him. On one hand, it meant Umbra was likely something special. On the other, it meant Harry had no idea what his shadow friend truly was. September 1st couldn't come fast enough. When the day finally arrived, Vernon reluctantly drove Harry to King's Cross Station, clearly delighted at the prospect of being rid of him for a whole school year. Platform 9 3/4, Vernon snorted as they unloaded Harry's trunk. Mad, the lot of you. He drove off laughing, leaving Harry alone with his trunk, Hedwig's cage, and the bewildering absence of a platform 9 3/4. Now what? Harry muttered to Umbra, who could only offer a shadowy shrug in response. Salvation came in the form of a family of redheads who seemed to know exactly where they were going. Harry watched in amazement as they disappeared one by one into a solid barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Excuse me, Harry approached the plump, kind-looking woman who seemed to be in charge. Could you tell me how to, get onto the platform, dear? First time at Hogwarts? Ron's new, too. She pointed to her youngest son, a tall, gangling boy with a smudge on his nose. Following her instructions, Harry pushed his trolley toward the barrier, heart hammering. What if it didn't work for him? What if this was all some elaborate prank? Umbra gave his ankle an encouraging nudge, and Harry broke into a run. Instead of crashing, he emerged onto a platform where a scarlet steam engine waited. Families crowded the platform, owls hooted, cats meowed, and the air buzzed with excitement. We did it, Harry breathed to Umbra as he navigated through the crowd. We're really going to Hogwarts. Finding an empty compartment, Harry settled in, releasing Hedwig from her cage and watching the platform through the window. Umbra stretched out beneath his feet, behaving perfectly normally but somehow conveying its excitement through subtle ripples across its surface. The compartment door slid open, and the youngest red-headed boy from the platform poked his head in. Anyone sitting there? He asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Go ahead, Harry invited, immediately warming to the boy's friendly manner. I'm Ron, by the way. Ron Weasley. Harry Potter. Ron's eyes widened. Are you really? Do you have the, He gestured to his forehead. Harry lifted his fringe to show the lightning scar. Wicked, Ron breathed, then seemed to catch himself. Sorry, I don't mean to stare. It's just, you're Harry Potter. It's okay, Harry assured him. I only found out I was Harry Potter, the Harry Potter everyone knows about, when Hagrid told me last month. You didn't know? Ron looked flabbergasted. Blimey, Harry, didn't your aunt and uncle tell you anything? They told me my parents died in a car crash. A car crash? A car crash killed Lily and James Potter? A new voice entered the conversation as a bushy-haired girl appeared in the doorway. I've read all about you, of course. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Umbra, still a perfect ordinary shadow, gave the slightest twitch at Hermione's rather abrupt entrance. Harry nudged it gently with his foot, a warning to behave. The journey to Hogwarts passed in a blur of conversation, magical sweets, and a brief confrontation with the pale boy from Madame Malkin's, Draco Malfoy, who offered Harry his friendship in a way that reminded him uncannily of Dudley selecting his gang members. I think I can tell the wrong sort for myself, thanks, Harry had said coolly, and Umbra had darkened slightly at his feet, sensing the potential threat in Malfoy's anger. By the time they reached Hogsmeade Station, Harry had made his first real friend in Ron, impressed Hermione with his knowledge from his textbooks, thanks to all his reading with Umbra, and successfully kept his Shadow's abilities secret. The castle itself took Harry's breath away. As they crossed the lake in small boats, Hogwarts loomed above them, windows sparkling against the night sky. Even Umbra seemed awestruck, stretching slightly toward the castle as if drawn to its ancient magic. Inside, they faced the Sorting Hat, a talking hat that read your mind and decided which of the 4 houses you belonged in. Harry's stomach twisted with anxiety as he waited for his turn. What if it puts me in Slytherin, he whispered to Ron. Hagrid said that's where dark wizards come from. You won't be, Ron assured him. You're Harry Potter. But when the hat finally dropped over Harry's eyes, it seemed less certain. Difficult. Very difficult, a small voice said in his ear. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a nice thirst to prove yourself. But what's this? How interesting. Harry tensed. Could the hat sense Umbra? Something shadows you, young Potter. Something of your own making, yet not entirely under your control. Fascinating. It speaks to your resourcefulness, your determination to survive. Slytherin would help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. Not Slytherin, Harry thought desperately. Not Slytherin. Not Slytherin, eh? Are you sure? With that shadow of yours, you could be great, you know, it's all here in your head, and Slytherin will help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. Please, Harry gripped the edges of the stool. Not Slytherin. Well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor. Relief flooded through Harry as the Gryffindor table erupted in cheers. He slipped into a seat beside Ron's older brothers, grinning as Ron soon joined him. But his smile faltered slightly when he caught the gaze of one of the teachers at the high table, a hook-nosed man with greasy black hair who was staring at him with undisguised dislike. As their eyes met, a sharp pain shot through Harry's scar. Umbra, stretched beneath the table, rippled with sudden tension. Who's that teacher talking to Professor Quirrell? Harry asked Percy Weasley, nodding toward the hook-nosed man. That's Professor Snape, head of Slytherin House. Teaches potions, but everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. Defense against the dark arts, that is. Harry nodded, watching Snape closely. The man's dark eyes bored into him with such intensity that Harry had to look away. Beneath the table, Umbra had stretched slightly toward Snape, as if assessing a potential threat. No, Harry whispered, nudging the shadow with his foot. Not here. Umbra reluctantly retracted, settling into normal shadow behavior once more. That night, full of excellent food and overwhelmed by the day's events, Harry lay in his four-poster bed in Gryffindor Tower and whispered to Umbra. We made it. We're actually at Hogwarts. The shadow, freed from the need to hide now that the dormitory curtains were drawn, rose up beside him in a vaguely humanoid shape. What did you think of Ron and Hermione? Harry asked. Umbra gave a thumbs up for Ron, then made a gesture that somehow conveyed, smart but talks too much, for Hermione. Harry chuckled. Yeah, that's about right. And what about Snape? You didn't like him, did you? The shadow shook its head emphatically, then pointed to Harry's scar. My scar hurt when he looked at me, Harry confirmed. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's dangerous. Maybe it was just coincidence. Umbra's posture suggested skepticism. We need to be careful here, Harry cautioned. If you start attacking teachers just because they give me dirty looks, we'll be in serious trouble. The shadow made a crossed heart motion, promising restraint. Good. And remember, nobody can know about you yet. Not even Ron. Umbra nodded, then settled down next to Harry, a comforting presence in the darkness as he drifted off to sleep. Classes began the next day, and Harry quickly discovered that being famous in the wizarding world didn't translate to magical talent. Everything was new and challenging, transfiguration with the strict Professor McGonagall, charms with the excitable Professor Flitwick, herbology in the greenhouses with Professor Sprout. Defense against the dark arts, which Harry had been particularly looking forward to, proved disappointing. Professor Quirrell stammered through lectures in a classroom that smelled strongly of garlic, supposedly to ward off a vampire he'd encountered in Romania. Curiously, Umbra seemed unusually agitated during Quirrell's classes, stretching and contracting in ways that, while not obvious to others, concerned Harry. His shadow friend had never reacted that way to anyone except Uncle Vernon at his angriest. What is it about him that bothers you? Harry asked one evening as they sat in a secluded corner of the Gryffindor common room, pretending to read while actually conversing. He seems harmless enough. Umbra pointed to Harry's scar, then made a writhing motion. My scar does hurt sometimes in his class, Harry admitted. But it hurts around Snape too. Maybe I'm allergic to teachers. The shadow didn't seem amused by this joke, instead making a gesture that clearly conveyed suspicion. Okay, I'll keep an eye on both of them, Harry promised. But no interfering unless there's real danger, got it? Umbra nodded reluctantly. Potions class proved to be as unpleasant as Harry had feared. Snape seemed to hate him on sight, mocking him during roll call and peppering him with difficult questions on the first day. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Snape demanded. Beside Harry, Hermione's hand shot into the air, but Snape ignored her. I don't know, sir, Harry said, feeling Umbra bristle beneath his feet. Snape's lips curled into a sneer. Fame clearly isn't everything. Throughout the class, Snape criticized everything Harry did, while praising Malfoy extravagantly. By the end of the session, Gryffindor had lost 2 points, and Harry was seething with resentment. Cheer up, Ron said as they climbed the steps out of the dungeon. Snape's always taking points off Fred and George. Harry nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Snape's dislike went beyond normal teacher-student friction. And Umbra clearly agreed, having remained in a state of tense alertness throughout the entire class. The weeks that followed settled into a routine. Harry attended classes, spent time with Ron and Hermione, who had become their friend after an incident with a mountain troll, and tried to unravel the mystery of what was hidden on the 3rd floor. Fluffy, the 3-headed dog they'd accidentally discovered, was guarding something that Snape seemed very interested in. Through it all, Umbra remained Harry's secret companion, offering silent comfort during homesick nights and subtle assistance when Malfoy and his cronies tried to cause trouble. The shadow had become increasingly good at small interventions that couldn't be traced back to Harry, tripping Malfoy as he prepared to hex Harry from behind, darkening corridors momentarily when they needed to escape Filch, even nudging books in the library that contained information they needed. One evening in late October, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were huddled in the library, researching Nicholas Flamel, whom Hagrid had accidentally mentioned in connection with the object Fluffy was guarding. There's nothing here, Ron groaned, closing yet another massive tome. There has to be something, Hermione insisted. Flamel must be famous if he's worked with Dumbledore. Harry felt a familiar nudge against his ankle, Umbra trying to get his attention. The shadow stretched slightly toward a section of the library they hadn't yet explored. I'm going to check over there, Harry said, casually following his shadow's lead. In a dusty corner of the alchemy section, Umbra's darkness pooled beneath a particular shelf, then stretched upward to touch a specific volume. Famous Alchemists Through the Ages, Harry read, pulling the book down. Good thinking, he caught himself just in time. Did you say something, Harry? Hermione called from the next aisle. Just talking to myself, Harry replied, carrying the book back to their table. It was in this book that they found their first mention of Nicholas Flamel as the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone, a legendary substance that could transform metal into gold and produce the elixir of life, which would make the drinker immortal. That's it! Hermione exclaimed. That's what Fluffy's guarding, the Philosopher's Stone. Harry nodded slowly, pieces falling into place. And that's what Snape wants. Immortality. Gold. We should tell Dumbledore, Hermione suggested. We don't have any proof, Ron pointed out. Just because Snape's a git doesn't mean he's trying to steal the stone. As they debated their next move, Harry felt Umbra grow tense beneath his feet. The shadow stretched slightly toward the library entrance, where Professor Quirrell had just entered, his purple turban slightly askew as he browsed the shelves. What's Quirrell doing in the library this late? Ron whispered. Looking up ways to protect against vampires, probably, Harry suggested, but he noticed how Umbra was behaving, the same alert tension it displayed around potential threats. Quirrell didn't approach them, but Harry couldn't shake the feeling that the stuttering professor was aware of their presence, perhaps even listening to their conversation. Let's go back to the common room, Harry suggested quietly. We can talk more there. As they packed up their books, Harry felt his scar prickle uncomfortably. When he glanced up, He caught Quirrell staring at him with an expression that didn't match his usual nervous demeanor, something calculating, almost hungry. The moment passed quickly, Quirrell reverting to his stammering self as he approached Madame Pants with a question. But Umbra remained agitated, darkening slightly as they passed the defense professor on their way out. That night, alone behind his bed curtains, Harry confronted his shadow friend. "You don't trust Quirrell, do you? You think he's after the stone, not Snape?" Umbra hesitated, then nodded slowly. "But why? Snape's the one who tried to get past Fluffy on Halloween. Snape's the one who jinxed my broom during the Quidditch match." The shadow made a "not sure" gesture, then pointed to Harry's scar again. "My scar does hurt around Quirrell too," Harry admitted. "But it doesn't make sense. Quirrell seems so harmless." Umbra's darkness formed what looked like a mask, then made a pulling-off motion. "You think he's pretending? Wearing a mask?" Harry frowned. "That's hard to believe. No one could fake being that pathetic." The shadow shrugged, clearly unconvinced. "I'll keep an eye on both of them," Harry promised. "But I still think Snape's our main suspect." The Christmas holidays brought a welcome break from classes and a nearly empty Gryffindor tower, as most students returned home. Harry received his first real Christmas presents, including his father's invisibility cloak from an anonymous sender. The cloak presented a new opportunity for exploration, and a new challenge for Umbra. When Harry was invisible, what happened to his shadow? They tested it in the empty dormitory. When Harry put on the cloak, Umbra disappeared from view as well, but Harry could still feel its presence. "Can you still move independently?" Harry whispered. In response, a tendril of darkness extended from beneath the cloak, visible against the dormitory floor despite Harry's invisibility. "Perfect," Harry grinned. "We can explore the castle without anyone seeing us." Their nighttime wandering soon led them to a discovery that haunted Harry, the Mirror of Eriste, which showed him his parents and extended family for the first time in his memory. Night after night, Harry returned to the mirror, drawn to the images of his family that he'd never known. Umbra seemed troubled by Harry's fixation, trying to pull him away from the mirror on their third visit. "Just a little longer," Harry pleaded, staring hungrily at his mother's face. The shadow tugged more insistently at his pajamas, clearly concerned. "Fine," Harry sighed, reluctantly turning away. "You're right. This isn't healthy." Dumbledore's unexpected appearance that night confirmed Umbra's instincts. The headmaster gently warned Harry about the dangers of the mirror. "It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live," and informed him it would be moved to a new home. As they left the room, Harry could have sworn he saw Dumbledore's eyes flick to Umbra, which was behaving perfectly normally at Harry's feet. But the headmaster made no comment, merely bidding Harry good night with a twinkle in his eye. The second term brought increasing pressure from exams and a breakthrough in their Flamel research, confirming their suspicions about the Philosopher's Stone. It also brought a frightening encounter in the Forbidden Forest during detention, where Harry encountered a cloaked figure drinking unicorn blood, a figure that caused his scar to burn with unprecedented pain. It was Voldemort, Harry told Ron and Hermione afterward. "I'm sure of it. And Snape is helping him get the stone." "Or Quirrell," Hermione suggested. "You said your scar hurts in his class too." "But Quirrell? Really?" Ron looked skeptical. "The man's afraid of his own shadow." Harry didn't mention that his own shadow was equally suspicious of the stuttering professor. That night, Umbra was more agitated than ever, forming and reforming shapes as if trying desperately to communicate something beyond its capabilities. "I know you're worried," Harry soothed. "But what can we do? We don't have proof that anyone's after the stone, let alone that it's Quirrell instead of Snape." Umbra pointed toward the third-floor corridor. "Check on the stone ourselves." "That's crazy," Harry said, then paused. "Although, if the thief is going to make a move, it'll probably be soon. With Dumbledore gone to the Ministry." The shadow nodded vigorously. "We'll talk to McGonagall tomorrow," Harry decided. "If she doesn't believe us, then we'll consider more direct action." But Professor McGonagall was dismissive of their concerns, assuring them that the stone was perfectly well protected. With no adults willing to listen, Harry, Ron, and Hermione made their decision: they would go through the trapdoor that night and stop the thief themselves. As they prepared to leave the common room under the invisibility cloak, Harry felt Umbra's presence, more alert and ready than ever before. Whatever they would face beneath the trapdoor, at least he had his shadow friend at his side. They made it past Fluffy using an enchanted harp left by the thief, fell through Devil's Snare, caught a flying key, won a giant chess match, at the cost of Ron being injured, and solved Snape's logic puzzle with the potions. Throughout each challenge, Umbra had helped in small, subtle ways, darkening the Devil's Snare to make it release them faster, guiding Harry toward the correct key, nudging the right potion bottle. Finally, only Harry could go forward through the fire. Hermione returned to help Ron and send for Dumbledore, while Harry faced the final chamber alone. Except he wasn't alone. Umbra was with him. And so was Professor Quirrell, standing calmly before the mirror of Eriste, without a trace of his stutter. "You!" Harry gasped. "But I thought, Snape, Severus." Quirrell laughed coldly. "Yes, he does seem the type, doesn't he? Next to him, who would suspect P.P. Poor, St. stuttering P. Professor Quirrell?" Harry's scar blazed with pain as Quirrell explained how Snape had been trying to protect Harry, not harm him. How Quirrell had let the troll in on Halloween, jinxed Harry's broom, and served a far more dangerous master. "My master is with me wherever I go," Quirrell said softly. "He shares my body." And then the terrible revelation came: Voldemort himself was attached to the back of Quirrell's head, hidden beneath the turban. The face that emerged as Quirrell unwound his headwear was nightmare-made flesh, chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. "Harry Potter," it whispered. "See what I have become. Mere shadow and vapor." At the word shadow, Umbra rippled with what felt like fury. Harry could sense its desire to attack, to protect him from this monstrous threat. "Not yet," Harry whispered, too quietly for Quirrell or Voldemort to hear. "Wait for the right moment." Forced to look in the mirror of Eriste, Harry somehow received the stone itself, hiding it in his pocket. But Voldemort sensed the deception. "He lies. He lies." The face hissed. "Seize him. Kill him." Quirrell lunged forward, hands closing around Harry's throat. Searing pain shot through Harry's scar, but something else happened too. Quirrell's hands began to blister and burn wherever they touched Harry's skin. "Master, I cannot hold him, my hands, my hands." "Then kill him, fool, and be done." Voldemort shrieked. As Quirrell raised his wand, Umbra finally acted. The shadow surged forward, no longer bound to Harry's feet but expanding rapidly, engulfing Quirrell in darkness so complete it seemed to absorb all light. Quirrell screamed, a sound of pure terror unlike anything Harry had heard before. "What is this magic?" Voldemort's voice hissed in confusion. Within the cocoon of darkness, Quirrell thrashed wildly, dropping his wand as Umbra constricted around him. Harry could see nothing but a writhing mass of shadow, hear nothing but muffled screams and Voldemort's increasingly desperate commands. "Fight it, you fool. It's just a shadow. It cannot harm you." But Voldemort was wrong. As the darkness briefly parted, Harry caught a glimpse of Quirrell, his skin cracking and turning to ash wherever Umbra touched him, just as it had when Harry's hands made contact. Understanding flashed through Harry's mind. Whatever protection his mother's sacrifice had given him against Voldemort, Umbra shared it. The shadow was an extension of that protection, born from the same magic that had saved Harry as a baby. Quirrell collapsed, the shadow still wrapped around him, and Harry fell to his knees as pain and exhaustion overwhelmed him. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Umbra returning to his side, once again just a shadow at his feet as Quirrell's body crumbled to dust. When Harry awoke in the hospital wing 3 days later, Dumbledore was there, blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles. "Good afternoon," Harry," the headmaster said cheerfully. "I see your shadow is as attentive as ever." Harry glanced down to see Umbra behaving like a perfectly ordinary shadow, though he could sense its alertness. "You know about Umbra?" Harry asked hesitantly. "Umbra. A fitting name." Dumbledore smiled. "And yes, I have observed your unusually protective shadow for some time now. Most fascinating magic. What is it? I mean, where did it come from?" Dumbledore stroked his long beard thoughtfully. "I believe it is a manifestation of your mother's protection, the same protection that prevented Voldemort from touching you, that burned poor Professor Quirrell. When you were in greatest need, that protection took form as your shadow friend. But why hasn't it happened to anyone else? Why me? The circumstances of your survival were unique, Harry. The combination of your mother's sacrifice, Voldemort's powerful curse, and your own innate magical ability created something unprecedented." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Magic, especially magic born of love and sacrifice, often works in mysterious ways." Harry absorbed this information slowly. "So Umbra is good? Not dark magic?" "The magic itself is neither good nor dark. It is your use of it that determines its nature." Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. "I have noticed your shadow friend has been quite restrained, intervening only when you face true danger. That speaks well of both of you." Relief washed through Harry. "So I can keep Umbra? I don't have to get rid of it, him? I see no reason why you should be separated from such a faithful protector." Dumbledore stood, preparing to leave. Though perhaps a bit of discretion would be wise. Not everyone would understand such unusual magic. As the headmaster reached the door, he paused. "Your mother would be proud, Harry. Not just of your bravery in facing Voldemort, but of how you've handled the gift her love created. Remember that." After Dumbledore left, Umbra rose up beside Harry's bed, forming a shape that somehow conveyed both relief and pride. "We did it," Harry whispered, reaching out to touch the shadow. "We protected the stone. We stopped Voldemort." Umbra nodded, then made a gesture suggesting this was just the beginning. "You're right," Harry agreed. "Something tells me he'll be back. But when he comes..." He smiled at his shadow friend. "We'll be ready." As the end-of-year feast approached, Harry rejoined his friends, sharing a carefully edited version of what had happened in the chamber with the mirror. Ron and Hermione accepted the story that Quirrell had been unable to touch Harry due to his mother's protection, never suspecting the role Umbra had played. On their last evening at Hogwarts, Harry stood at the window of the empty dormitory, looking out at the grounds bathed in twilight. "We're going back to the Dursleys tomorrow," he said quietly to Umbra, who swirled beside him in the fading light. "But it'll be different this time. They don't know I'm not allowed to use magic outside school." Umbra formed what looked suspiciously like a mischievous grin. "Plus, I have you," Harry added. "My secret weapon." The shadow stretched up to pat his shoulder reassuringly. "Next year will be better," Harry decided. "No more mysteries, no more three-headed dogs, no more Voldemort. Just a normal year at Hogwarts." Umbra's silent laughter suggested it knew better. Nothing about Harry Potter's life would ever be normal, and that was perfectly fine with both of them. Chapter 2, Friend or Fiend. Summer at Privet Drive turned out better than Harry could have possibly imagined. The Dursleys, terrified that Harry might turn them all into toads, gave him Dudley's second bedroom permanently and generally avoided him whenever possible. Harry kept his school things in his room instead of locked in the cupboard, and even though he couldn't actually do magic, despite what the Dursleys believed, Umbra made sure life was interesting. The first night back, Uncle Vernon installed a cat flap in Harry's bedroom door for passing food through and added 5 heavy locks on the outside. "Just in case you get any funny ideas, boy," he'd growled. Harry had simply smiled. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Uncle Vernon." That same night, Umbra slipped through the crack under the door, traveled down the hallway to where the keys hung, and returned with the entire ring. The locks were opened before midnight. "You're getting really good at carrying things," Harry whispered as Umbra deposited the keys in his hand. The shadow performed a little bow, clearly pleased with itself. "Just don't get caught. And don't hurt anyone unless I'm in actual danger, remember?" Umbra made a cross-my-heart motion over where its heart would be if it had one. Life fell into a comfortable pattern. During the day, Harry did his chores without complaint, occasionally letting small comments about practicing transfiguration slip within earshot of Dudley, who would flee the room in terror. At night, Harry studied his magical textbooks while Umbra fetched midnight snacks from the kitchen. The only real problem was Harry's homework. Professor Snape had assigned a particularly nasty essay on moonstone properties, and Harry's textbooks didn't contain nearly enough information. After a week of struggling, Harry mentioned his frustration to Umbra. "I wish I could visit a magical library," he sighed. "Or at least send Hedwig to Ron or Hermione for help, but Uncle Vernon's keeping her locked up." Umbra, who had been idly forming shapes on the wall, suddenly perked up. It pointed to Harry's school trunk, then made writing motions. "You want me to write to them anyway? But how would we send it?" The shadow seemed to puff up with pride, pointing to itself. Harry's eyes widened. "You could deliver letters. All the way to Ron or Hermione's house. That's miles away." Umbra made a so gesture, then pointed to the calendar on Harry's wall, indicating it would take time. "It's worth a shot," Harry decided. He quickly penned 2 letters explaining his situation and asking for help with the moonstone essay. Umbra stretched out a tendril, absorbing the folded letters into its darkness. Then it slipped under the door and was gone. 3 days passed with no sign of the shadow. Harry grew increasingly anxious. Had something happened? Could Umbra even find its way to Ron's house without an address? What if it got lost, or worse, caught by someone from the Ministry of Magic? On the 4th night, just as Harry was getting ready for bed, a familiar darkness seeped through his window. "Umbra!" Harry whispered excitedly. "You made it back." The shadow looked exhausted, its movements slower than usual as it produced 2 return letters from within its darkness, along with several pages of notes in Hermione's neat handwriting. "You're brilliant." Harry examined the notes with delight. "Absolutely brilliant. Was it hard to find them?" Umbra made a nodding motion, then collapsed dramatically onto Harry's bed. "You should rest," Harry said, concerned. "No more errands for a few days." The shadow gave a grateful wave before melting back into its normal position as Harry's shadow. Hermione's letter, beyond providing extensive moonstone information, contained something unexpected. "P.S. Harry, the strangest thing happened when your letter arrived. It was late at night, and I was reading in bed when suddenly all the shadows in my room gathered together on my desk and your letter just appeared out of nowhere. I've been researching shadow transportation magic but haven't found anything like it. Is this how wizarding mail works sometimes? Please explain when we meet at Diagon Alley." Oh," Harry muttered to Umbra, who had perked up enough to read over his shoulder. "Hermione's noticed you. We'll need a good explanation." Umbra made a dismissive gesture, clearly unconcerned. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one who'll have to answer her questions. Ron's letter mostly complained about his brothers and mentioned his family would be shopping in Diagon Alley the last Wednesday of August." Harry marked the date on his makeshift calendar, wondering how he'd convince the Dursleys to take him to London. As it turned out, he didn't have to worry. 2 weeks before the end of summer holiday, Harry awoke to find an unfamiliar owl tapping at his window. The letter it carried was from Ron, explaining that his father was coming to rescue Harry the following night in a flying car. "A flying car?" Harry read aloud to Umbra. "Is that normal for wizards?" The shadow gave what appeared to be a shrug. "The rescue went mostly according to plan, if you didn't count the bars on Harry's window or Uncle Vernon nearly falling out of said window while trying to stop Harry from leaving." Throughout the chaotic escape, Umbra kept perfectly still, behaving like a normal shadow even as Fred and George Weasley heaved Harry's trunk into the hovering Ford Anglia. It wasn't until they were high above Surrey, the lights of Little Whinging twinkling below them, that Harry allowed himself to relax. Umbra, sensing they were safely away, gave a little ripple of delight at his feet. What was that? Ron asked suddenly, looking toward the floor of the car. What was what? Harry asked innocently, giving Umbra a mental nudge to behave. Thought I saw something move by your feet. Ron peered into the darkness. Probably just shadows from the dashboard lights. Probably, Harry agreed, relief washing over him. He'd have to be more careful. At Hogwarts, with more people around all the time, keeping Umbra's secret would be much harder. Life at the Burrow was everything Privet Drive wasn't: warm, chaotic, and filled with magic. Mrs. Weasley fussed over how thin Harry looked, Mr. Weasley peppered him with questions about electricity and other Muggle inventions, and the house itself seemed alive with enchantments. The only challenge was finding private moments to communicate with Umbra. The shadow had grown used to freedom at Privet Drive, and Harry could sense its frustration at having to remain perfectly still and ordinary around the Weasleys. Just a few days, Harry whispered one night when Ron's snoring assured him his friend was asleep. You can move around all you want once we're at Hogwarts and I can close my bed curtains. Umbra, which had been stretching luxuriously across the wall of Ron's orange bedroom, made a gesture like it was crossing days off a calendar. I know you're bored, but we can't risk anyone seeing you. The Weasleys have been so nice to me, I don't want to freak them out. The shadow drooped slightly, then nodded in understanding. The Weasley family trip to Diagon Alley brought unexpected complications. First came the disastrous Floo powder journey that landed Harry in Knockturn Alley, where he witnessed a suspicious transaction involving Draco Malfoy's father. Then the spectacle of Gilderoy Lockhart at Flourish and Blots, using Harry for publicity before announcing he'd be teaching defense against the dark arts. Through it all, Umbra remained perfectly still, though Harry could sense its alertness when Mr. Malfoy and Mr. Weasley nearly came to blows in the bookshop. The real challenge came when they met Hermione outside Gringotts. Harry, she exclaimed, hugging him tightly. I've been so worried. Did you get my reply about the Moonstone essay? How did you send that letter? It just appeared out of nowhere in my room. Oh, Harry stammered, very aware of Ron listening curiously nearby. Just trying out a new magical delivery system. Sort of experimental. Not really supposed to talk about it. Experimental? Hermione's eyes widened. But you can't do magic outside school. You'll get in trouble with the ministry. It wasn't exactly me doing the magic, Harry said carefully. More like, magic doing itself. I'll explain more at school, okay? Hermione looked dissatisfied but nodded. Fine, but I've been researching shadow transportation, and, look, there's Flourish and Blots. Harry interrupted desperately, pointing toward the bookshop where a crowd was gathering. Bet that's the Lockhart signing Ron's mum wanted to see. The distraction worked, temporarily at least. But Harry knew Hermione wouldn't forget. She never did. The journey to Hogwarts should have been straightforward. Should have been. Instead, Harry and Ron found themselves locked out of platform 9 3/4, decided the logical next step was to fly Mr. Weasley's enchanted car to school, crashed spectacularly into the Whomping Willow, nearly got expelled, and became instant celebrities among their classmates. Not the low-profile return Harry had hoped for. That was too close, Harry whispered to Umbra that night in the Gryffindor dormitory. Snape looked ready to have us thrown out on the spot. The shadow, finally free to move around behind Harry's closed bed curtains, made a dismissive gesture. Then it formed a shape like a car with its front end smashed in and performed a silent laugh. It's not funny. We could have died. Umbra mimed wiping away tears of mirth, then patted Harry's shoulder apologetically. At least we're back at Hogwarts. Harry looked around the familiar dormitory with its comfortable four-poster beds. Though I have a feeling this year won't be any quieter than the last. Classes began the next day, and Harry quickly discovered that second year brought new challenges. Professor Sprout introduced them to Mandrix, whose cry could kill those who heard it. Professor McGonagall expected more complex transfigurations. And Gilderoy Lockhart proved to be the most incompetent defense teacher imaginable, releasing Cornish pixies into the classroom before fleeing from their chaos. Throughout it all, Umbra remained perfectly ordinary in public, though Harry occasionally caught Hermione giving his shadow suspicious glances. The confrontation he'd been dreading came 3 weeks into term. Harry was alone in the library, researching switching spells for McGonagall's essay, when Hermione slid into the chair across from him. "We need to talk about your shadow," she said without preamble. Harry's heart sank. "My shadow? Don't play dumb, Harry. I've been watching." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Sometimes it moves when you don't. Just little movements, but I've noticed. And then there's how my notes on Moonstone appeared in my bedroom in the middle of the night." Umbra, stretched out beneath the library table, went completely still. "Hermione, I'm not accusing you of anything," she interrupted. "I'm curious. I've been researching living shadows, but there's hardly anything in the regular library books. I'd need access to the restricted section." Harry hesitated. He trusted Hermione, but Umbra was his most personal secret. His first real friend. As if sensing his thoughts, Umbra stretched a tendril up to touch his hand beneath the table, a gesture of reassurance. "If I tell you," Harry said slowly, "you have to promise to keep it secret. Not even Ron can know yet." Hermione's eyes widened. "Is it dangerous?" "No," Harry said quickly. "Well, not to friends, anyway. But it's unusual. I promise I won't tell anyone." Hermione made an X over her heart. Harry took a deep breath. "It started the summer before first year. My shadow sort of came alive. It can move independently, carry small objects, even travel pretty far from me. I call it Umbra. It has a name." Hermione looked fascinated rather than frightened, which was a relief. "It's my friend," Harry explained. "It protects me. Back at the Dursleys, it would bring me food when they locked me up, or trip Dudley when he tried to hit me. That's why you weren't starving when Ron and his brothers rescued you," Hermione realized. "Your shadow was helping you." Harry nodded. "It was also Umbra that delivered your Moonstone notes. It can carry things within its darkness, kind of absorbing them temporarily." Fascinating. Hermione's academic curiosity was clearly overriding any fear or suspicion. "Can it communicate?" "Not with words. But it understands everything we're saying right now, and it can gesture to get its meaning across." As if on cue, Umbra stretched up from beneath the table and gave Hermione a little wave. To her credit, Hermione didn't scream or run away. Her eyes widened dramatically, but then she gave a small wave back. "Hello, Umbra. I'm Hermione." The shadow bowed elegantly. "It has personality," Hermione observed, fascinated. "How did this happen, Harry? Did you cast a spell accidentally?" "Dumbledore thinks it's connected to my mother's protection, the same magic that burned Quirrell when he touched me. Apparently when I was really desperate for help at the Dursleys, the protection manifested as Umbra." Hermione absorbed this information slowly. "That makes sense, actually. Ancient protective magic often takes unusual forms. I read about a witch in medieval times whose tears crystallized into protective amulets when her children were threatened." Umbra was making excited gestures, clearly pleased that Hermione understood. "The most important thing is that no one else finds out," Harry stressed. "Imagine what Malfoy would say if he knew I had a living shadow. Or worse, what if the Ministry decided it was dark magic and tried to separate us?" "Your secret is safe with me," Hermione promised. "But I do think we should research it more. If Umbra is connected to the protection that saved you from you-know-who, it could be incredibly powerful magic." Umbra made a muscle-flexing gesture that made both Harry and Hermione laugh. Does it have limits? Hermione asked. Things it can't do. It can't speak, Harry explained. And it can only carry small objects. It gets tired if it travels too far from me, and bright light seems to weaken it a bit. But it's getting stronger all the time. Does Ron know? Harry shook his head. I wasn't sure how he'd react. You know how he is about unusual magic. Remember how freaked out he was by Nicholas Flamel being 600 years old? Hermione nodded thoughtfully. We should tell him eventually. He's your best friend. I will, Harry promised. Just, not yet. With Hermione in on the secret, Harry found life at Hogwarts easier. She helped create distractions when Harry needed to communicate with Umbra, kept watch during their private practice sessions in empty classrooms, and most importantly, brought her formidable research skills to understanding the shadow's nature. I've been thinking, she said one evening as they sat in a secluded corner of the common room. If Umbra is made of protective magic, it should be able to identify threats, right? Harry nodded. It definitely tries to warn me about people it doesn't trust. It never liked Quirrell, for instance. What about Lockhart? Hermione asked, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. Harry glanced down at Umbra, which promptly formed the shape of a preening peacock, then made a gagging motion. I think that's a no, Harry laughed. Hermione looked disappointed but soldiered on. It's a shame Umbra can't talk. I wonder if there's a way to enhance its communication abilities. We've tried writing, Harry explained. It can form letters, but it's slow and tires Umbra out quickly. Umbra demonstrated by laboriously forming the letters HI on the floor between them, then slumping in apparent exhaustion. Drama queen, Harry muttered fondly. The shadow gave him what could only be described as the shadow equivalent of sticking out its tongue. What if we created a simple sign language? Hermione suggested. Basic gestures for common concepts. It already seems to communicate through pantomime pretty effectively. That's brilliant, Hermione. Harry exclaimed. We could start with simple signals for danger, safe, follow me, that sort of thing. Over the next few weeks, between classes and homework, they developed a rudimentary sign system. Umbra proved an enthusiastic student, quickly mastering gestures to indicate various types of threats, from immediate physical danger, a sharp stabbing motion, to someone is lying, a wavy, snake-like movement. October arrived, bringing chilly weather and the first Hogsmeade weekend for the older students. With the castle relatively empty one Saturday, Harry and Hermione decided to conduct more extensive tests of Umbra's abilities in an unused classroom. Let's see how far Umbra can travel from you before losing cohesion, Hermione suggested, notebook ready. She'd taken to documenting their findings with scientific precision. Harry nodded to Umbra, who stretched away from his feet, extending across the floor toward the far wall. About 15 feet away, the shadow began to look strained, its edges becoming less distinct. That's further than last month, Harry observed. It used to start fading at 10 feet. It's definitely getting stronger, Hermione made a note. What about lifting objects? What's the heaviest thing it can move? They tested progressively heavier items, a quill, a textbook, Hermione's bag full of books. Umbra managed to shift the bag slightly, but couldn't lift it completely. About 10 pounds, I'd estimate, Hermione said, jotting down the result. That's impressive for something with no physical form. The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside sent them scrambling to look normal. Umbra instantly flattened beneath Harry's feet, just as the door opened to reveal Ron. There you are, he exclaimed. I've been looking everywhere. Woods called an emergency Quidditch practice. Says he's got new strategies to beat Slytherin next month. On a Hogsmeade weekend? He's obsessed, Harry sighed, gathering his things. He caught Hermione's eye. Sorry about the, transfiguration practice, Hermione. We'll continue another time. Of course, she said smoothly. The theory of partial object transformation can wait. Ron looked between them suspiciously. Since when are you two having private study sessions? Since Harry asked for help with McGonagall's latest essay, Hermione replied without missing a beat. You're welcome to join us next time. No thanks, Ron said quickly. Come on, Harry. Wood looks ready to hex anyone who's late. As they headed to the Quidditch pitch, Harry felt guilty about the secrets he was keeping from Ron. But how did you tell your best mate that your shadow was alive and semi-sentient? It wasn't exactly casual conversation material. The Quidditch match against Slytherin the following weekend brought unexpected danger. Barely 10 minutes into the game, Harry noticed a bludger behaving oddly. It focused solely on him, ignoring all other players and returning relentlessly no matter how many times the Weasley twins knocked it away. Someone's tampered with it. Fred shouted as he battled the rogue ball away from Harry's head for the 6th time. Harry nodded grimly, rain dripping from his sodden robes as he scanned the sky for the snitch. The sooner he caught it, the sooner this deadly game would end. A flash of gold near the Slytherin goal posts caught his attention. The snitch. But as he accelerated toward it, the bludger came screaming back. Harry rolled on his broom, narrowly avoiding it, then had to swerve wildly as it changed direction in midair to chase him. What the hell? He gasped as the iron ball missed him by inches. Down in the stands, Hermione watched in horror. That bludger's been bewitched, she told Ron. It's only going after Harry. Should we alert Madame Hooch? Ron asked, squinting through the rain. Before Hermione could answer, the bludger connected with Harry's arm. Even from the stands, they heard the sickening crack of breaking bone. Harry swayed on his broom, vision blurring with pain. The snitch was still nearby, hovering just beyond Malfoy's oblivious shoulder. With his good arm, Harry urged his nimbus forward. The bludger came around for another attack, aimed directly at Harry's head. In that moment of extreme danger, Umbra acted. The shadow detached from Harry's feet and spread across his back like a protective cloak. As the bludger struck, Umbra absorbed some of the impact, causing the iron ball to bounce away with a strange reverberating sound instead of crushing Harry's skull. No one else could see the shadow's intervention, it happened too quickly, and the stormy conditions made visibility poor. But Harry felt it, a cool darkness briefly enveloping him like armor. Thanks, he whispered, then lunged forward with his good arm, closing his fingers around the struggling snitch just before nearly crashing into the muddy pitch below. The aftermath was chaotic. Lockhart attempted to fix Harry's broken arm and instead removed all the bones. As Harry was escorted to the hospital wing, Hermione hung back momentarily. That was Umbra, wasn't it? She whispered when no one else could hear. It protected you from that second bludger hit. Harry nodded slightly. Don't think anyone else noticed. I only saw because I was watching through omnioculars. It moved so fast. Hermione looked troubled. Harry, someone tried to really hurt you out there. That wasn't a normal Quidditch accident. I know, Harry grimaced as pain shot through his boneless arm, which now resembled a flesh-colored rubber glove. Add it to the list of people who want me dead, I guess. That's not funny, Hermione chided. We need to figure out who bewitched that bludger. My money's on Malfoy, Ron interjected, joining them. Did you see his face when Harry caught the snitch? Looked like he'd swallowed a flobberworm. Harry spent the night in the hospital wing, enduring the painful process of regrowing 33 bones with Skeelgrow. Unable to sleep due to the burning sensation, he whispered quietly to Umbra in the darkness. You saved me today. Again. The shadow, stretched across Harry's hospital bed, made a dismissive gesture as if to say it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. That bludger would have crushed my skull if you hadn't cushioned it. Harry paused. You're getting better at reacting quickly. And at manipulating physical objects. Umbra performed a mock bow. The thing is. Harry hesitated. I'm worried someone might have noticed. If Umbra keeps having to save me publicly, people will start asking questions. The shadow seemed to consider this, then pointed to Harry's arm where the bones were painfully regrowing. I know I'd be hurt worse without your help. But we need to be smarter about this. Maybe you can warn me about threats before they become emergencies. Umbra nodded enthusiastically, then made their agreed-upon signal for practice needed, a motion like a tiny person doing push-ups. You're right. We should practice more. Develop your abilities so you can help less obviously. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft pop as Dobby the house elf appeared at the foot of Harry's bed. The strange creature confessed to bewitching the bludger, insisting that Harry needed to be injured enough to be sent home, away from the terrible danger at Hogwarts. Danger? What danger? Harry demanded. Does this have something to do with the Chamber of Secrets Malfoy mentioned? Dobby couldn't say more, bound by his magical servitude to the Malfoy family, but his warnings were clear. Something terrible was happening at Hogwarts, and somehow, Harry was caught in the middle of it. After Dobby disappeared and Harry was left alone again, Umbra made the gesture they'd established for serious threat, a sharp slashing motion followed by darkness gathering in a pool. Yeah, Harry agreed soberly. Whatever's going on, it's big. And if Dobby's willing to nearly kill me to keep me safe from it. The shadow rippled with determination, forming a protective circle around Harry's bed. We'll figure it out, Harry promised. Together. The following day brought shocking news. Colin Creevey, a first-year Gryffindor who'd been annoying Harry with constant photography, had been found petrified in a corridor. The Chamber of Secrets, it seemed, had indeed been opened. When Harry was finally released from the hospital wing, he joined Ron and Hermione in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, where they were brewing Polyjuice Potion to investigate Malfoy as the potential heir of Slytherin. It'll be ready in about a month, Hermione explained, stirring the cauldron carefully. Around Christmas. A month? Harry groaned. But more people might be attacked by then. Ron peered into the bubbling mixture. It's the best plan we've got. Unless your shadow friend has any better ideas? He laughed at his own joke. Harry and Hermione exchanged alarmed glances. What do you mean? Harry asked cautiously. You know, like in those Muggle comic books Dad confiscated last summer. The Shadow Detective or whatever. Solves crimes by lurking in shadows. Ron shrugged. Just a joke. Harry forced a laugh. Right. Funny. When Ron went to check if Myrtle was eavesdropping, Hermione whispered, that was close. But maybe Ron has a point, not about comic books, but about Umbra helping us investigate. Harry considered this. What do you mean? Well, Umbra can go places we can't. It could spy on Malfoy, see if he's really the heir. Umbra, stretched beneath Harry's feet, gave an enthusiastic ripple. It would be risky, Harry whispered. What if someone notices a detached shadow moving around on its own? People rarely look at shadows, Hermione pointed out. It's the perfect disguise. That night in the empty dormitory, Harry briefed Umbra on its mission. Follow Malfoy when you can do it safely. See where he goes, what he does. If he's the heir of Slytherin, he might visit the Chamber of Secrets or talk about it with Crabbe and Goyle. Umbra made their signal for understood, a quick salute-like gesture. Be careful, Harry stressed. Don't go too far from me, and if anyone notices you, come back immediately. The shadow bowed solemnly, then melted into the ordinary darkness of the room, beginning its surveillance mission. Over the next 2 weeks, Umbra reported back nightly. Through their basic sign language and charades, the shadow conveyed that Malfoy spent most of his time in the Slytherin Common Room, the Great Hall, classrooms, or occasionally the library. Nothing suspicious, no secret chambers or midnight wanderings. Maybe it's not him after all, Harry told Hermione as they pretended to study in the library. The Polyjuice will tell us for sure, she replied, checking on a reference book. It's almost ready. Their conversation was interrupted by excited chatter at nearby tables. Professor Lockhart was starting a dueling club, and the first meeting was that night. Could be useful, Harry admitted. With the chamber open, learning to defend ourselves isn't a bad idea. The dueling club proved both illuminating and disastrous. Illuminating because Snape thoroughly humiliated Lockhart, confirming the defense teacher's incompetence. Disastrous because Harry was paired with Malfoy, who conjured a snake that slithered menacingly toward Justin Finch-Fletchley, and Harry spoke to it in Parseltongue without realizing it. The revelation that Harry could speak to snakes, an ability associated with Salazar Slytherin himself, turned most of the school against him overnight. Suddenly, Harry Potter was the prime suspect for being the heir of Slytherin. "This is ridiculous," Hermione fumed in the common room that evening. "Just because you can talk to snakes doesn't make you the heir. Try telling that to everyone else," Harry said glumly, watching his fellow Gryffindors give him a wide berth. "They all think I'm setting a monster on Muggleborns now." Ron looked uncomfortable. "It is a bit weird, mate. Parseltongue is really rare. Even in wizarding families, it almost never happens." "Well, I didn't know I could do it," Harry protested. "It's not like I've been hanging out with snakes my whole life." Umbra, maintaining its ordinary appearance beneath Harry's chair, gave his ankle a reassuring touch. Things got worse the next day when Justin Finch-Fletchley and nearly headless Nick were found petrified, with Harry at the scene. Even with Dumbledore's apparent faith in his innocence, most students now avoided Harry entirely, whispering behind their hands when he passed. The Christmas holidays brought a welcome break. With most students gone home, Harry, Ron, and Hermione finally executed their Polyjuice plan, infiltrating the Slytherin common room as Crabbe and Goyle. To their disappointment, they discovered Malfoy was not the heir of Slytherin. He didn't even know who was behind the attacks. Back to square one, Ron sighed as they returned to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Hermione, unfortunately, had accidentally used cat hair instead of human hair in her potion and was now sporting fur, whiskers, and a tail. As she headed to the hospital wing, Harry pulled Ron aside. "I need to tell you something important." Ron looked concerned. "What's wrong? Is it about the chamber?" "No, it's about me. Or rather, about." Harry took a deep breath. "My shadow." "Your shadow?" Ron repeated blankly. Harry explained everything, how Umbra had first appeared at the Dursleys, how it had protected him throughout first year, how it was connected to his mother's sacrificial protection. When he finished, Ron stared at him in shock. "Your shadow is alive. And has been for over a year. And Hermione knew before me." "I was going to tell you," Harry said quickly. "It's just, with everything that's been happening." To demonstrate, Harry nodded to Umbra, which rose up from the floor and formed a hand that waved at Ron. Ron yelped, jumping backward. "Bloody hell. It's really real." "Meet Umbra," Harry said. "My first magical friend." Ron approached cautiously, circling the shadow with wide eyes. "Does it bite?" Umbra made a laughing motion, shoulders shaking silently. "It has a sense of humor," Harry explained. "And it's been helping us investigate the chamber. Following Malfoy, looking for clues." "Wicked," Ron breathed, his initial fear giving way to fascination. "Like having your own personal spy." Umbra bowed appreciatively. "So Hermione's been helping you, what? Train it?" "Research mostly," Harry explained. "Trying to understand what Umbra is and what it can do. Dumbledore thinks it's an extension of my mother's protection, the same magic that burned Quirrell when he touched me." Ron's eyes widened. "So it can hurt people who try to harm you? Like a magical bodyguard?" "Only genuine threats," Harry clarified. "It doesn't attack people just because they annoy me. Otherwise, Malfoy would have been tripping downstairs all year." "Pity," Ron grinned. He tentatively reached toward Umbra, who extended a tendril to meet his fingertips. "Feels cold. Like water, but not wet." It's gotten a lot better at physical interactions, Harry explained. At first, it could barely move small objects. Now it can carry books, unlock doors, even cushion impacts. Is that how you survived that mental bludger? I wondered how you managed to stay conscious after that second hit. Harry nodded. Umbra's saved my life more than once. Ron sat down on a nearby bench, processing everything. Why keep it secret? This is amazing, Harry. Think about how people are reacting to me being a Parselmouth, Harry pointed out. Now imagine if they knew I had a living shadow that can attack people. Fair point, Ron admitted. With the chamber open and everyone looking for the heir, a mysterious shadow ability wouldn't exactly help your case. Exactly. So you'll keep it secret? Course I will, Ron said firmly. But this means we have another way to investigate the chamber. Umbra can go places we can't, look for the entrance. Umbra made an enthusiastic gesture, clearly eager to help. We've been trying that, Harry explained. But Hogwarts is huge, with hundreds of hidden passages. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. We need to narrow it down, Ron mused. The last time the chamber was opened was 50 years ago, right? Maybe we should focus on areas of the castle that haven't changed much since then. It was a good suggestion, and over the next few weeks, the trio developed a more systematic approach to their investigation. Hermione researched the castle's history, identifying the oldest sections that had remained largely unchanged for centuries. Ron mapped out patrol routes to avoid being caught out of bounds. And Harry worked with Umbra on extending the shadow's range and perception. One evening in late January, they gathered in an unused classroom to compare notes. I've been thinking, Hermione said, spreading out her parchment notes. If the monster is petrifying people rather than killing them outright, it might be holding back deliberately. Or something's interfering with its power, Ron suggested. Maybe it's old and weak after being locked up for so long. Harry frowned. What kind of monster petrifies its victims? That's not a common ability. Umbra, which had been idly forming shapes on the wall, suddenly made their agreed signal for important realization, a light bulb shape above its head. What is it? Harry asked, turning to his shadow. Umbra pointed to Harry's book bag, then made a slithering motion like a snake. A snake? The monster is a snake? Hermione asked. The shadow nodded vigorously. That makes sense, Harry said slowly. Slytherin was a Parselmouth. If he left a monster in the chamber, it would likely be a serpent of some kind that only his heirs could control. A snake that petrifies. Hermione's eyes widened. Of course. Why didn't I think of it before? It must be a basilisk. A what? Ron and Harry asked simultaneously. A basilisk, a giant serpent. It's mentioned in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The direct gaze of a basilisk kills instantly, but none of the victims saw it directly. Hermione was speaking rapidly now, excitement building. Colin saw it through his camera. Justin must have seen it through nearly headless Nick, who's already dead so he couldn't die again. Mrs. Norris saw its reflection in the water on the floor. What about the spiders? Ron asked, referring to the strange behavior of spiders fleeing from the castle that Hagrid had mentioned. Spiders flee from basilisks, Hermione confirmed. It all fits. Umbra was making enthusiastic gestures of agreement. But how is it moving around the castle without being seen? Harry wondered. A giant snake would be pretty noticeable. Umbra pointed to the wall, then made a tunneling motion. Pipes. Hermione gasped. It's using the plumbing system to move around. It all made terrible sense. The entrance to the Chamber of Secrets must connect to Hogwarts' extensive plumbing. The basilisk was traveling through the pipes, emerging only to attack. We need to tell a teacher, Hermione insisted. This is too dangerous for us to handle alone. Who would believe us? Ron argued. We don't have proof, just a theory. McGonagall might listen, Harry suggested. Or Dumbledore. Before they could decide, the classroom door swung open. Professor McGonagall stood there, looking unusually pale. Potter, Weasley, thank goodness I've found you. There's been another attack. A double attack. Harry's heart sank. Who? Penelope Clearwater, a Ravenclaw prefect, and... McGonagall swallowed hard. Miss Granger. What? Ron gasped. But Hermione's right, they turned to where Hermione had been standing, but there was only empty air. Umbra was making frantic gestures, pointing toward the door, then making their signal for danger nearby. I don't understand, Harry said, his mind racing. Hermione was just here. McGonagall's expression changed, becoming colder, more calculating. Was she really, Potter? Or is that just what you wanted to see? Her voice changed mid-sentence, becoming higher, more girlish. Before their horrified eyes, McGonagall began to shift and blur, her form melting like wax until a different figure stood before them, a red-haired girl in Slytherin robes. Ginny! Ron exclaimed, staring at his sister in shock. What are you doing? Where's McGonagall? But Harry could tell something was terribly wrong. Ginny's eyes were vacant, her movements stiff and unnatural. Umbra was practically vibrating with alarm, forming their danger signal repeatedly. Not Ginny, Harry realized aloud. Someone's controlling her. A cold, high laugh came from Ginny's mouth, a boy's laugh, nothing like her normal voice. Very perceptive, Harry Potter. But too late to help your mudblood friend, I'm afraid. She's been quite petrified by my little pet. Who are you? Harry demanded, slowly reaching for his wand. A memory, not Ginny replied. Preserved in a diary for 50 years, until dear Ginny poured her heart and soul into my pages. So trusting, so naive, she made it so easy for me to pour a little of myself back into her. Understanding dawned on Harry. Tom Riddle. You're the one who opened the chamber before. Not Ginny, Riddle smiled coldly. My ancestor Salazar would be proud. I've purged the school of mudbloods in his name, just as I did 50 years ago. You framed Hagrid, Harry accused, recalling what they'd learned about the previous opening. It was my word against his, Riddle shrugged using Ginny's body. Only Dumbledore seemed to suspect. But this time, I've been more careful. When they find you standing over the petrified forms of these two students, there will be no doubt who the heir of Slytherin really is. 2 students. Ron repeated, looking around wildly. But there's only, a soft thud from the corridor interrupted him. Hermione's unconscious form was pushed through the doorway by an invisible force, falling limply to the floor. She wasn't petrified like the others, but unconscious, or worse. What did you do to her? Harry demanded, kneeling beside Hermione while keeping his wand trained on Riddle. A simple stunning spell, Riddle said dismissively. She saw too much, figured out too much. Clever for a mudblood, I'll give her that. Found me in the bathroom just as I was commanding the basilisk to kill. She'll make a fine victim for you to be discovered with. Harry's mind raced. The bathroom, that's where the entrance must be. Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, where they'd been brewing Polyjuice potion. It made sense, Myrtle had been killed 50 years ago, the first victim. Umbra was stretching toward Hermione, checking for signs of life. The shadow gave a quick signal, still alive. You won't get away with this, Harry said, stalling for time as he tried to think of a plan. Dumbledore will know I didn't do it. Dumbledore has been driven from the castle, Riddle smirked. Your word means nothing. And after I'm finished with you, Ginny will remember nothing. Poor, sweet Ginny, who killed the mudbloods and finally, killed herself. So tragic. Ron lunged forward with a roar of rage, but Riddle was faster. Ginny's hand raised Harry's stolen wand, when had he taken it, and Ron flew backward, crashing into a desk. "Now then," Riddle said pleasantly. "Let's make this look convincing, shall we?" The heir of Slytherin, driven mad by his Parseltongue powers, attacking his friends. Harry backed up slowly. Umbra was gathering beneath his feet, darkness pooling and intensifying. He could feel its readiness, its protective instinct surging. "You're not really Slytherin's heir, are you?" Harry said, hoping to keep Riddle talking. "Who are you really, Tom Riddle?" A cruel smile twisted Ginny's features. "Haven't you guessed? I thought you'd have figured it out by now." Ginny's finger traced letters in the air, fiery text hovering between them. Tom Marvolo Riddle with a flick, the letters rearranged themselves. "I am Lord Voldemort, you," Harry whispered. "It was you all along." "The greatest sorcerer in the world," Riddle agreed. "Even as a memory, I am more powerful than you could ever be, Harry Potter. And now, I think it's time to end this little chat." He raised Ginny's arm, Harry's wand pointed directly at his heart. Avada, Umbra exploded into action. The shadow launched itself from the floor, expanding with incredible speed to engulf not just Harry but the entire room in impenetrable darkness. Harry heard Riddle cry out in shock, felt the spell die on his lips as Umbra's cold embrace surrounded them all. In the perfect blackness, only Harry could see, a strange, inverse vision where everything appeared as outlines of light against the dark. He saw Ron scrambling to his feet, Hermione's still form on the floor, and Ginny's body with Riddle's consciousness recoiling from the shadow's touch. "What is this magic?" Riddle hissed, Ginny's voice overlaid with his own. "Lumos Maxima." A burst of light tried to penetrate the darkness but was instantly absorbed by Umbra. The shadow was in its element, its power at its peak. Harry felt a cool tendril press his own wand into his hand. Umbra had somehow retrieved it from Riddle in the confusion. "Ron!" Harry called. "Get Hermione out of here. I can't see anything." Ron's panicked voice came from somewhere to his left. Umbra stretched a tendril toward Ron, illuminating a path only he could see, leading him to Hermione and then to the door. Riddle was firing spells wildly now, but in the perfect darkness, he couldn't aim. Flashes of magic were swallowed by Umbra's embrace before they could reach their targets. "You think darkness will save you?" Riddle snarled. "I will find you, Harry Potter. I always find my prey." Harry moved silently through the shadow realm of Umbra's creation, circling behind the possessed Ginny. Umbra had shown him something else in the darkness, a small black book protruding from Ginny's robes. The diary. The source of Riddle's power. With a quick lunge, Harry grabbed the diary from Ginny's pocket. Riddle screamed in rage, spinning around, but it was too late. "Give that back," he demanded. "You have no idea what forces you're playing with." "I know exactly what I'm doing," Harry replied, backing away with the diary clutched tightly. "Umbra, hold him." The shadow responded instantly, wrapping tendrils around Ginny's arms and legs, immobilizing her despite Riddle's furious struggles. "How are you doing this?" Riddle demanded. "What is this power?" "My mother's love," Harry answered simply. "The same power that defeated Voldemort the first time." He needed to destroy the diary, but how? As if sensing his question, Umbra formed a shape before him, a basilisk fawn. "Of course," Harry breathed. The venom of a basilisk was one of the few substances powerful enough to destroy almost anything. And while Harry didn't have access to actual venom, there was something else that might work. "Ron," he called. "I need something sharp. A knife, anything. Bit busy here." Ron's voice came from near the door, where he was presumably tending to Hermione. Harry looked around desperately. There had to be something he could use. His eyes fell on a broken desk, splintered from Ron's impact. A jagged piece of wood jutted out, sharp as a dagger. He grabbed it and turned back to the diary. "This is for Hermione, and for Ginny, and for everyone you've hurt." "You can't destroy me," Riddle laughed, though there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. I am Lord Voldemort. I am immortal. You're just a memory, Harry countered. A shadow of the real thing. And I have a real shadow on my side. With all his strength, Harry drove the wooden stake through the center of the diary. Ink burst from the pages like blood, spraying across his hands and the floor. A terrible scream tore from Ginny's throat, Riddle's scream, high and inhuman. Umbra released Ginny as her body convulsed, Riddle's possession breaking apart. She collapsed to the floor, the diary still impaled on the wooden spike, leaking black ink like a wounded creature. Gradually, the absolute darkness receded as Umbra contracted, returning to Harry's side. Light filtered back into the room, revealing Ron kneeling beside a stirring Hermione, and Ginny lying unconscious but breathing on the floor. Is it over? Ron asked, helping Hermione sit up. Is Ginny okay? Harry knelt beside the youngest Weasley, checking her pulse. She's alive. I think Riddle's gone. What happened? Hermione asked groggily. The last thing I remember is walking to the library and seeing Ginny acting strangely. Tom Riddle was possessing her, Harry explained, showing them the ruined diary. He's the one who opened the chamber 50 years ago, and he made Ginny do it this time. Tom Riddle? Hermione repeated, rubbing her head. But that would make him Voldemort, Harry confirmed. A younger version preserved in this diary. Ginny stirred, eyelids fluttering. Harry, she whispered, voice small and frightened. What happened? I didn't mean to, the diary made me. It's okay, Harry assured her. It wasn't your fault. Riddle's gone now. But the chamber, the basilisk, Ginny struggled to sit up. Still out there, Harry realized grimly. Even with Riddle gone, the basilisk is still in the chamber. Umbra formed their signal for immediate action needed, a spinning motion followed by a sharp point. You're right, Harry nodded to his shadow. We need to tell the teachers, get everyone to safety. We need to go to McGonagall, Hermione decided, getting shakily to her feet. Tell her everything we know about the basilisk. As they helped Ginny up, preparing to leave, the shadow made another urgent gesture, pointing to the floor, then making a slithering motion. Harry froze. Everyone be quiet, he whispered. Listen. In the silence, they heard it, a soft scraping sound from inside the walls. Something large was moving through the pipes. It's coming, Harry breathed. The basilisk is on the hunt. Umbra stretched toward the door, forming their signal for, follow quickly. We need to move, Harry urged. Ron, help Ginny. Hermione, stay close. And whatever you do, don't look directly at anything that moves. They hurried into the corridor, following Umbra's lead as the shadow guided them away from the scraping sounds. The castle seemed eerily deserted, all students had been confined to their common rooms after the latest attacks. Where are we going? Ron whispered, supporting a still disoriented Ginny. Teacher's lounge, Harry decided. Most of the staff should be there for the emergency meeting. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with Professor McGonagall, the real one this time. Her face registered shock at the sight of them. Potter. Weasley. Miss Granger. What are you doing out of your... She stopped abruptly, noticing Ginny's condition. What happened? Professor, we know what's in the Chamber of Secrets, Harry said urgently. It's a basilisk. That's why no one's died, they didn't look it directly in the eye. McGonagall's face paled. A basilisk? Are you certain? Positive, Hermione affirmed. And it's moving through the pipes. That's why no one's seen it except the victims. And the entrance, Harry continued, it's in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. She was the student killed 50 years ago when the chamber was last opened. McGonagall looked torn between skepticism and urgency. How could you possibly know all this? There's no time to explain, Ron interjected. The basilisk is on the move right now. We heard it in the walls. That decided her. McGonagall raised her wand, casting a Patronus that sped off down the corridor. A warning to the other teachers, she explained. We need to evacuate the school immediately. A distant crash echoed through the castle, followed by a terrible, inhuman hiss that Harry recognized instantly as Parseltongue. Kill, kill, so hungry. It's free, Harry whispered. The basilisk is in the castle. Umbra was stretching toward the sound, making frantic warning gestures. Take Miss Weasley to the hospital wing, McGonagall ordered Ron. Miss Granger, go with them. Potter, come with me to alert the headmaster. Professor Dumbledore's back. Harry asked hopefully. Returned an hour ago, McGonagall confirmed. The governors reinstated him when they heard about Miss Granger's, well, what they thought was her petrification. Another crash, closer this time. The basilisk was heading their way. Go. McGonagall urged. Quickly. As Ron and Hermione helped Ginny in one direction, Harry followed McGonagall in another. Umbra stayed close to Harry's feet, occasionally stretching ahead to check corridors before they entered them. They had nearly reached the stone gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office when disaster struck. The wall beside them exploded outward in a shower of stone and dust. A massive, serpentine form burst through the debris, filling the corridor with its immense, scaled body. Don't look at its eyes. Harry shouted, turning away instantly. McGonagall reacted with incredible speed, conjuring a wall of flame between them and the basilisk. Run, Potter. But the basilisk lunged through the flames, barely slowed by the magical fire. Its massive head swung toward McGonagall, who had her back turned to avoid its deadly gaze. Harry saw it happening as if in slow motion. The professor, unaware of the precise location of the serpent's head, couldn't dodge in time. The basilisk's fangs gleamed as it prepared to strike. No! Harry shouted. Umbra exploded into action, shooting from Harry's feet with incredible speed. The shadow expanded, forming a barrier between McGonagall and the lunging basilisk. As the serpent's fangs struck, Umbra wrapped around them, momentarily deflecting the attack. McGonagall stumbled backward, finally seeing the shadow's intervention. Potter, what? No time. Harry grabbed her arm, pulling her toward Dumbledore's office. Run. Umbra couldn't hold the basilisk for long. The shadow was stretched to its limit, visibly straining against the incredible strength of Slytherin's monster. With a final surge of effort, Umbra pushed the basilisk's head away, buying them precious seconds before flowing back to Harry's side. They reached the gargoyle, and McGonagall gasped, "Lemon drops." The statue leapt aside, revealing the spiral staircase to Dumbledore's office. They burst into the circular room to find Dumbledore already standing, as if expecting them. Basilisk, McGonagall panted. In the castle. The students are being evacuated as we speak, Dumbledore assured her. Severus and Filius are ensuring all students reach the Great Hall, where they'll float to safety. His calm in the crisis was remarkable, but Harry noticed the grave concern in his blue eyes as they settled on Harry. I believe you have quite a tale to tell, Harry, he said quietly. Including, perhaps, an explanation of the rather remarkable shadow that just saved Minerva's life. McGonagall looked between them in confusion. Shadow? What shadow? Before Harry could respond, a terrible crash echoed from below. The basilisk had followed them. It's coming, Harry warned. Indeed. Dumbledore drew his wand. Minerva, please join the evacuation efforts. I will deal with our serpentine intruder. Albus, you can't possibly face a basilisk alone. McGonagall protested. I won't be alone, Dumbledore replied calmly, glancing at Harry and, curiously, at Umbra. Will I, Harry? Harry swallowed hard. No, sir. McGonagall looked as though she might argue further, but another crash decided her. Be careful, both of you, she said sternly, then hurried down the stairs. When she was gone, Dumbledore turned to Harry. Your shadow friend has grown quite powerful since our last discussion. You knew all along? Harry asked, not entirely surprised. I suspected from the moment I saw how your shadow sometimes moved independently of you. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. A most unusual manifestation of your mother's protection. Umbra rose up between them, forming a more distinct shape than Harry had ever seen it manage, a silhouette that bore a striking resemblance to Harry himself, but more confident, more powerful. Fascinating, Dumbledore murmured. It has developed a self-image. Another crash, much closer. The basilisk was scaling the tower. Sir, what do we do? Harry asked urgently. How do you kill a basilisk? That, Harry, is an excellent question. Dumbledore moved to a glass case on the wall, opening it to reveal a magnificent silver sword with rubies set in its hilt. The sword of Godric Gryffindor may provide our answer. He handed the sword to Harry, who took it with surprise. Me? But you're the greatest wizard, the basilisk cannot kill me with its gaze, I have ways to counter that, but its venom remains lethal even to me, Dumbledore explained. You, however, have something I do not. He nodded to Umbra. A guardian made from the very protection that defends you against dark magic. Umbra straightened, seeming to stand taller at this acknowledgement. The shadow can shield you from the basilisk's attacks long enough to strike, Dumbledore continued. I will provide distraction and support, but the killing blow must be yours, Harry. The wall of the office shuddered as something massive collided with it from the stairwell. It seems our time for planning has run out, Dumbledore said calmly. Remember, Harry, the eyes are its weapon, but the roof of the mouth is its vulnerability. And your shadow friend knows this instinctively. Umbra nodded in confirmation, stretching protectively around Harry's shoulders like armor. The wall exploded inward as the basilisk's massive head burst through the stone. Dumbledore immediately conjured a flock of brilliant red birds that swarmed the serpent's face, pecking at its deadly eyes. The basilisk thrashed in rage, its enormous body demolishing bookshelves and instruments as it fought to enter the circular office. Harry rolled behind Dumbledore's desk, the sword of Gryffindor clutched tightly in his hands. Harry! Dumbledore called, maintaining his bird conjuration while simultaneously strengthening the remaining walls to prevent the tower's collapse. Now, while it's distracted. Harry looked to Umbra, who had formed a complete shadow suit around him, a living armor of darkness that left only his eyes visible. Together, he whispered. As one, Harry and Umbra leapt from behind the desk, charging toward the thrashing basilisk. The shadow guided his movements, lending him speed and agility he'd never possessed before. They ducked beneath the serpent's tail, dodged its lunging head, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. The basilisk reared back, its bloodied eyes still dangerous but no longer instantly fatal thanks to Dumbledore's birds. It opened its massive maw, fangs glistening with venom, and struck. Time seemed to slow. Umbra propelled Harry upward in a leap that should have been impossible, positioning the sword perfectly. As the basilisk's open mouth came toward them, Harry thrust the blade upward with all his might, driving it through the roof of the serpent's mouth and into its brain. A terrible screech filled the office as the basilisk convulsed. Even as the sword found its mark, one of the venomous fangs grazed Harry's arm, piercing his skin. Pain like fire shot through Harry's veins. He fell back, the sword still embedded in the basilisk's skull as the creature thrashed in its death throes. Umbra caught him, cushioning his fall as deadly venom spread through his system. Harry! Dumbledore was at his side instantly, examining the wound with grave concern. The venom acts quickly. We must, but Umbra was already moving, wrapping itself tightly around Harry's injured arm. The shadow darkened, concentrated, seeming to draw the poison out of the wound and into itself. Harry watched in amazement as black lines of venom visible beneath his skin were pulled toward Umbra, absorbed into the shadow's darkness. Remarkable, Dumbledore whispered. It's extracting the venom. The pain began to recede, though Harry still felt terribly weak. Is the basilisk? Dead, Dumbledore confirmed, glancing at the now still serpent. Thanks to your bravery, and your extraordinary guardian. Umbra finished drawing out the venom, then settled back into a more normal appearance, though it stayed partially wrapped around Harry's arm like a bandage. What happens now? Harry asked weakly, allowing Dumbledore to help him into a chair. Now, the headmaster replied, his blue eyes twinkling despite the destruction around them, I believe we have a chamber to close, students to reassure, and perhaps most importantly, a most fascinating magical phenomenon to discuss. He nodded to Umbra. Your shadow has saved many lives today, Harry. It may be time to consider bringing it out of the darkness, so to speak. Harry looked down at Umbra, which had relaxed somewhat now that the immediate danger had passed. I'm not sure the wizarding world is ready to learn about a living shadow that can kill basilisks. Perhaps not the whole wizarding world, Dumbledore agreed. But your friends? Your teachers? Those who care for you should know about this extraordinary extension of your mother's love. Harry considered this. I'll think about it. But first, we should probably deal with the giant dead snake in your office. Dumbledore chuckled. Indeed. Though I must say, it does add a certain dramatic flair to the decor. In the aftermath of the basilisk's defeat, Hogwarts slowly returned to normal. The petrified victims were restored with Mandrake restorative draft. Ginny Weasley recovered from her possession, though she would need time to heal fully from the trauma. Hagrid was released from Azkaban with a full apology from the Ministry. And Harry, along with Ron and Hermione, was awarded special awards for services to the school during a feast celebrating the end of the Chamber of Secrets threat. What wasn't publicly acknowledged was Umbra's role in it all. By mutual agreement between Harry and Dumbledore, the living shadow remained a secret from most of the school, though Harry did confide in a select few, Professor McGonagall, who had witnessed Umbra's protection firsthand, Madame Pomfrey, who needed to understand Harry's unusual healing abilities, and of course, Ron and Hermione, who had been there through it all. On the last night of term, Harry sat with his friends by the lake, watching the giant squid lazily propelling itself across the water's surface. Umbra stretched comfortably at their feet, occasionally forming shapes to make Hermione laugh or playfully tugging at Ron's shoelaces. I still can't believe you have a living shadow, and you didn't tell me for months, Ron complained, though there was no real anger in his voice. To be fair, you might have freaked out a bit, Harry pointed out. Yeah, well. Ron shrugged. It's pretty cool now that I'm used to it. Saved our lives and all that. Hermione was watching Umbra with academic interest as the shadow practiced forming more complex shapes. It's getting stronger, isn't it? More defined. Harry nodded. Dumbledore thinks it's evolving. The more challenges it faces, the more it develops. Does that worry you? Hermione asked carefully. What if it keeps evolving? Becoming more independent? Harry considered this. Umbra is part of me. Whatever it becomes, it's still connected to my mother's protection. I trust it. As if in response, Umbra formed a heart shape, then pointed to all three of them. Ah, it loves us, Ron grinned. Shadow's got feelings. Of course it does, Hermione said. It's not just magic, it's love magic. That's what makes it so powerful. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the lapping of the lake against the shore. So, Ron said eventually, think we can have a normal year next time? No possessed teachers, no giant snakes, no near-death experiences. Harry laughed. With my luck. Not a chance. Umbra formed what looked suspiciously like a shrug, then settled back into a normal shadow as the setting sun lengthened their silhouettes across the grass. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Harry knew one thing for certain, he wasn't facing them alone. He had his friends beside him, and his shadow watching over him. The living darkness born from his mother's love would always be there, ready to protect, to aid, and perhaps most importantly, to remind him that even in the darkest times, he carried a piece of that love with him. Always. Chapter 3, Twofold protection. Harry's summer at Privet Drive started the way it always did, with absolute misery. Uncle Vernon's sister Marge came to visit, and she was even worse than the Dursleys, if that was possible. She spent every waking moment insulting Harry's parents, calling his mom and dad drunks and layabouts. Harry was at his breaking point by the third day. "Umbra, I swear I'm going to lose it," he whispered in his bedroom, pacing back and forth while his shadow friend watched from the wall. "If she says one more thing about my parents." Umbra made a calming gesture, though Harry could tell even the shadow was irritated. Whenever Aunt Marge spoke particularly nastily, Umbra would darken noticeably, its edges becoming sharper, more menacing. I know. I can't let her get to me." Harry flopped down on his bed. 2 more days. I just need to survive 2 more days without exploding. He didn't make it 2 more hours. At dinner, Marge started in on his mother specifically, calling her bad blood like she was talking about a dog's breeding. Something inside Harry snapped. Before he could even think about controlling his magic, the wine glass in Marge's pudgy hand exploded. Then, more alarmingly, Marge herself began to inflate like a balloon, expanding until she floated up to the ceiling. The Dursleys were screaming. Harry was yelling. Umbra was practically vibrating with agitation beneath his feet. And then Harry just left. He stormed upstairs, threw his belongings into his trunk, and walked straight out the front door with Umbra flowing behind him like an angry storm cloud. "I'm never going back there," Harry muttered as he dragged his trunk down Privet Drive, Hedwig's empty cage tucked under his arm. He'd released her earlier to hunt, which was fortunate, one less thing to worry about. Never. He made it about 3 blocks before the adrenaline wore off and reality hit him. He was alone, at night, with nowhere to go. And he'd just performed serious underage magic. The Ministry would be looking for him. As if sensing his thoughts, Umbra stretched up from the pavement, forming their signal for danger approaching, a sharp, stabbing motion. Harry looked around wildly. Where? The shadow pointed down the street, where a large, black dog was watching from between 2 houses. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness. "It's just a stray," Harry said, though something about the dog's intense gaze made him uneasy. "Come on, we need to figure out what to." A deafening bang interrupted him as a violently purple, triple-decker bus materialized right in front of them. The night bus, as the conductor Stan Shunpike informed him, could take him anywhere he wanted to go. Diagon Alley, Harry decided, giving the name Neville Longbottom to avoid recognition. As the bus lurched forward with impossible speed, throwing Harry back into a brass bedstead, he noticed Umbra behaving strangely. The shadow kept stretching toward the windows, then retreating, as if tracking something outside. "What is it?" Harry whispered when Stan wasn't looking. Umbra made the danger following signal again. "The dog?" Harry asked, surprised. The shadow nodded, then added a new gesture, forming a shape like a man, then shifting to a dog shape, then back again. Harry's eyes widened. "An animagus? The dog is a wizard?" Another nod. "Great," Harry muttered. "Just what I need. Someone tracking me." The night bus dropped him at the Leaky Cauldron, where to Harry's surprise, Minister for Magic Cornelius Fudge was waiting. Instead of being expelled for the Aunt Marge incident, Harry was told to stay at the Leaky Cauldron for the remaining 2 weeks before school started. "Don't go wandering into Muggle London," Fudge warned before leaving. "Stay in Diagon Alley. And..." He hesitated, looking at Harry oddly. "Be careful of your shadow, Mr. Potter." Harry tried to keep his expression neutral. "My shadow, sir." "Just a turn of phrase," Fudge said with forced cheerfulness. "Good night." As soon as Fudge left, Umbra rose up from the floor in agitation. "He knows something," Harry agreed. "But what? And how?" The shadow formed a shape like a magnifying glass, then pointed to itself. "Someone's been watching us," Harry guessed. "Monitoring my magic, maybe." Umbra nodded, then added a new, disturbing gesture. It formed the outline of what appeared to be a brain, then made a grabbing motion. Someone wants to study you. Experiment on you. The shadow confirmed with a grim nod. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. We'll need to be extra careful at school this year. The next 2 weeks passed pleasantly despite Umbra's warning. Harry explored Diagon Alley freely, worked on his summer homework in the sunshine outside Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor, and bought his school supplies at leisure. A week before term started, Ron and Hermione arrived with the rest of the Weasleys, who were staying at the Leaky Cauldron after their trip to Egypt. Harry. Hermione hugged him tightly. We've been so worried. When we heard about the incident with your aunt. You should have seen Dad's face when he heard, Ron grinned. He was trying so hard not to laugh while Mum went on about how serious it was. Is she still floating? Harry asked guiltily. Nah, the accidental magic reversal squad got her down, Ron assured him. Modified her memory and everything. But blimey, Harry, you actually blew up your aunt. Not on purpose, Harry protested, though he couldn't help smiling a little. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Harry, Ron, and Hermione gathered in Harry's room for a proper catch-up. Umbra, finally free to move normally, stretched luxuriously across the walls. I've been researching living shadows all summer, Hermione announced, pulling several books from her bag. There's not much information, but I did find some references to ancient protective magic that can manifest in similar ways. Anything useful? Harry asked, watching Umbra examine the books with interest. Maybe. Hermione opened one particularly old tome. There's a reference here to something called a Shade Guardian, a protective entity created when powerful love-based magic combines with extreme need. Sounds like Umbra, Ron commented, watching the shadow form shapes on the ceiling. The book says Shade Guardians grow more powerful over time, developing greater autonomy and abilities. Hermione looked at Umbra thoughtfully. Have you noticed any changes lately? Harry nodded. It can travel farther from me now, and it's better at manipulating physical objects. And he hesitated. It seems to understand things I don't, sometimes. Like it has knowledge I don't have access to. Umbra nodded emphatically. That's consistent with the text, Hermione said excitedly. It says the Guardian draws not only from the caster's magic but from their deeper self, subconscious knowledge, intuition, even genetic memory. Genetic memory? Ron repeated skeptically. Like knowledge passed down through your family line, Hermione explained. It might explain why Umbra seemed to know about your parents when you didn't. Umbra formed a shape like a lightning bolt, which they'd come to understand was its symbol for Voldemort. It definitely knows things about Voldemort, Harry agreed, ignoring Ron's wince at the name. It warned me about Quirrell long before we confirmed he was hosting Voldemort. And it could sense the diary Horcrux in Ginny immediately. Horcrux? Hermione asked, frowning. That's what Dumbledore called it afterward, Harry explained. A piece of Voldemort's soul embedded in the diary. That's how he was able to possess Ginny. Ron shuddered. Nasty business, that. Umbra was making agitated movements, forming their danger signal repeatedly. What is it? Harry asked, alarmed. The shadow pointed to the window, then made its signal for watching, a shape like eyes. They all turned to look. For a moment, Harry thought he saw a flicker of movement in the darkness outside, but it was gone so quickly he couldn't be sure. Someone's watching us? Hermione whispered. Umbra thinks so, Harry confirmed. And I think the Ministry knows about it too. Fudge made a strange comment about my shadow when he met me here. Ron went to the window, peering out cautiously. Don't see anyone now. Could have been a cat or something. Or the dog, Harry said, telling them about the strange black dog Umbra had identified as an animagus. An unregistered animagus following you? Hermione looked worried. Harry, that's serious. You should tell someone. Tell who? Fudge, who's already suspicious about my shadow. Or maybe I should write to Dumbledore, dear Professor, my living shadow says there's an animagus stalking me. Also, someone spying on us right now. P.S. How was your summer? Ron snorted. He's got a point, Hermione. We'll just have to be extra careful, Harry decided. Umbra can warn us if anyone gets too close. The shadow gave a salute in agreement. The journey to Hogwarts brought a terrifying new threat, Dementors, the soul-sucking guardians of Azkaban, now stationed around Hogwarts to catch Sirius Black, the escaped prisoner who had supposedly betrayed Harry's parents to Voldemort. When the Dementors searched the train, Harry collapsed, overwhelmed by their power and the terrible memories they forced him to relive, his mother's screams as Voldemort murdered her. But something unexpected happened. As the Dementor loomed over Harry, reaching with its rotted hand, Umbra rose up between them. The shadow expanded, forming a barrier that the Dementor seemed unable to penetrate. Though Harry still felt the creature's cold effect, it was diminished, as if Umbra was absorbing some of the dark magic. The new defense against the dark arts teacher, Professor Lupin, drove the Dementor away with a Patronus charm, but not before seeing Umbra's unusual behavior. After Harry recovered, Lupin pulled him aside. That was quite an interesting defense mechanism, Harry, he said quietly, offering chocolate. I've never seen a shadow behave quite that way before. Harry froze. I don't know what you mean, Professor. Lupin's eyes were kind but knowing. Your shadow. It moved independently to protect you from the Dementor. Most remarkable. You saw that? I did. And I suspect I'm not the only one who's noticed. Lupin's expression turned serious. Be careful, Harry. There are people in the wizarding world who would be very interested in such unusual magic. Are you going to report it? Harry asked nervously. Lupin smiled slightly. Report what? That Harry Potter's shadow seems particularly dark. I don't think that's worth mentioning to anyone, do you? Relief washed over Harry. Thanks, Professor. Don't thank me yet, Lupin cautioned. I'd like to understand this better. Perhaps we could discuss it during our anti-Dementor lessons. Anti-Dementor lessons? Unless you'd rather not learn how to defend yourself against them. No, that would be brilliant. Harry said quickly. Lupin nodded. Good. And Harry. Your mother was extraordinarily talented with protective charms. I wouldn't be surprised if what I saw was connected to her magic. Harry stared at him. You knew my mother? I did. Both your parents, actually. We were friends at Hogwarts. Lupin's eyes took on a distant look. Perhaps we can discuss that as well, during our lessons. Back with Ron and Hermione, Harry told them about Lupin's observations. He saw Umbra and he's not freaking out. Ron looked impressed. That's a good sign, right? I think so, Harry agreed. But his warning about people being interested in Umbra worries me. It should, Hermione said grimly. Think about it, a living shadow that can repel Dementors. The Ministry would definitely want to study that. Umbra formed a shape like a cage, then pointed to itself. Exactly, Harry nodded. And I'm not letting anyone lock Umbra up for experiments. The beginning of term brought new classes, particularly divination with the dramatic Professor Trelawney, who promptly predicted Harry's death via the Grim, a spectral black dog that was supposedly an omen of death. A black dog? Harry repeated, thinking of the animagus Umbra had identified. The Grim takes the form of a giant, spectral dog, Trelawney intoned dramatically. It is among the darkest omens in our world, an omen of death. Throughout the class, Umbra remained perfectly still beneath Harry's chair, though he could sense its tension. When they finally escaped Trelawney's incense-filled tower, the shadow gave a little ripple that somehow conveyed eye-rolling skepticism. I'm with Umbra, Hermione declared after Harry described the shadow's reaction. Professor Trelawney is an old fraud. Seeing death omens everywhere. But I did see a black dog, Harry reminded her. The night I left Privet Drive. Coincidence, Hermione said firmly. There are plenty of stray dogs in suburban areas. Except Umbra identified it as an animagus, Ron pointed out. And now Trelawney's seeing death dogs in Harry's tea leaves. It's probably Sirius Black, Harry suggested darkly. He escaped to come after me, right? Makes sense he'd be watching me. Umbra, however, made a negative gesture, then formed a shape that suggested protection rather than threat. You don't think the dog is dangerous? Harry asked, surprised. The shadow shook its head, then made a new signal they hadn't seen before. It formed the shape of a stag. A deer? Ron guessed. What's that got to do with anything? Umbra seemed frustrated by its inability to communicate more clearly. It pointed to Harry, then made the stag shape again, then pointed to the black dog shape. The stag is connected to me, and the dog is connected to the stag? Harry tried to interpret. The shadow nodded enthusiastically. That doesn't make any sense, Hermione frowned. Unless. Harry, did your father have any connection to deer? Or maybe your mother? I don't know, Harry admitted. I hardly know anything about them. Umbra made a gesture suggesting patience, they'd figure it out eventually. The first defense against the dark arts lesson proved that Professor Lupin was the best teacher they'd had yet. His practical approach to dealing with a boggart gave the class confidence and actual skills, though Harry wasn't allowed to face the creature himself. I assumed it would take the form of Lord Voldemort, Lupin explained afterward. I did think of Voldemort first, Harry admitted. But then I remembered the Dementor on the train. Lupin nodded approvingly. That suggests what you fear most is fear itself. Very wise, Harry. What Harry didn't mention was that Umbra had given him a subtle nudge when he'd been thinking of Voldemort, a warning to consider other fears. The shadow seemed particularly attuned to Harry's thoughts around danger and threats. After class, Lupin asked Harry to stay behind briefly. I noticed your shadow behaving normally today, he observed. It knows to be careful in public, Harry explained, as Umbra remained perfectly still at his feet. Fascinating. Lupin studied the shadow with academic interest. It has awareness, then? Consciousness? Yes, sir. It can communicate through gestures, and it understands everything we say. Remarkable, Lupin murmured. And it's been with you since. The summer before first year, Harry explained. After a particularly bad incident with my uncle. Something dark flashed across Lupin's face. I see. And Dumbledore knows about this? Harry nodded. He thinks it's connected to my mother's protection, the magic that saved me from Voldemort as a baby. That would make sense, Lupin agreed. Lily was brilliant with charm work, particularly protective spells. He seemed about to say more, then checked his watch. You should get to your next class. But Harry. I'd like to continue this discussion during our anti-Dementor lessons. Your shadow's ability to resist them could be incredibly useful. The next few weeks passed in a blur of classes, Quidditch practice, and growing concerns about Sirius Black, who had apparently been sighted near Hogsmeade. Harry's disappointment at not being allowed to visit the Wizarding Village due to the danger was somewhat offset by the map Fred and George Weasley gave him, the Marauder's map, showing every person's location within Hogwarts. This is brilliant! Harry exclaimed, watching the tiny labeled dots moving around the parchment. We can see everyone, everywhere. Umbra seemed particularly excited about the map, stretching to examine it closely. The shadow pointed to the names at the top, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. The creators, Harry nodded. Fred and George don't know who they were, just that they were master pranksters. The shadow made the stag shape again, then pointed to Prongs. Prongs, like antlers. Harry's eyes widened. You think one of these people is connected to the stag you showed us? The one connected to me. Umbra nodded vigorously. But who? Hermione asked, peering at the map. And how would Umbra know that? The shadow made a gesture suggesting deep knowledge, touching where its heart would be, then its head. Genetic memory, Hermione breathed. Like I was saying before. Umbra knows things about your family that you don't, Harry. Before they could discuss it further, Harry noticed something strange on the map, a dot labeled, Peter Pettigrew, moving through a corridor near the Gryffindor common room. That's impossible, Ron said, frowning at the name. Pettigrew is dead. Sirius Black killed him 12 years ago. The map never lies, Fred had insisted when giving it to Harry. We should check it out, Harry decided, grabbing his invisibility cloak. They hurried to the location shown on the map, but found the corridor empty. The Pettigrew dot had vanished. Maybe the map does make mistakes, Hermione suggested. But Umbra was agitated, stretching across the floor as if searching for something. The shadow extended toward a small crack in the baseboard, then made their signal for hidden danger, a low, sweeping motion. There's something there? Harry asked. In the wall. Umbra nodded, then formed the shape of what looked like a rat. A rat? Ron pulled out his pet, Scabbers, who had been looking sickly for months. Like Scabbers? The shadow went completely still for a moment, then exploded into agitated movement, pointing repeatedly at Scabbers while making their most urgent danger signal. Scabbers squealed in terror, biting Ron's finger and making a desperate leap for freedom. Umbra shot after the rat, nearly catching it before it disappeared through the same crack in the baseboard. What the bloody hell? Ron exclaimed, nursing his bleeding finger. Umbra tried to attack Scabbers. I don't understand, Harry said, watching his shadow return reluctantly. Umbra's never gone after an animal before. Umbra was making frantic gestures, pointing to the map where Pettigrew's name had been, then making the rat shape, then their signal for disguise or false appearance. Hermione gasped. It thinks Scabbers is Pettigrew. An animagus, like the black dog. That's mental, Ron protested. Scabbers has been in my family for 12 years. How long do rats normally live? Hermione asked pointedly. 3 or 4 years, Ron admitted. But magical pets live longer. Harry looked at Umbra, which was making their signal for absolute certainty, a firm, definitive motion. Umbra seems pretty sure, Ron. So my rat is an unregistered animagus who's supposed to be dead. Ron looked skeptical. Why would he hide as a pet rat for 12 years? I don't know, Harry admitted. But if Peter Pettigrew is alive, then Sirius Black might not have killed him, Hermione finished. Which means Black might be innocent, Harry realized. We need to talk to Professor Lupin. He might know something about this. Their anti-Dementor lessons had already revealed that Lupin had been friends with Harry's father. Perhaps he knew Pettigrew and Black as well. Before they could approach Lupin, however, a new complication arose. Harry was summoned to Dumbledore's office, where he found the headmaster looking unusually grave. I've had a rather concerning report, Harry, Dumbledore said without preamble. About your shadow. Harry's stomach dropped. Sir. It seems during your last Quidditch match, when the Dementors entered the field, your shadow displayed some unusual properties. Properties that were noticed by someone from the Department of Mysteries. During the disastrous match against Hufflepuff, Harry had fallen 50 feet when Dementors swarmed the pitch. Only Umbra's quick action, stretching to create a kind of parachute effect, had slowed his descent enough to prevent fatal injury, though he'd still been knocked unconscious. I didn't know anyone saw that, Harry said nervously. It happened so fast. Indeed. But unspeakables are trained to notice unusual magical phenomena. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. This particular individual, Unspeakable Caldwell, has requested permission to examine your shadow. Examine? Harry repeated, alarmed. What does that mean? She wishes to run tests, observe its behavior under controlled conditions. Dumbledore's blue eyes were serious. I have, of course, denied this request in its current form. You and your shadow are not research subjects to be experimented upon. Relief washed through Harry. Thank you, sir. However, Dumbledore continued, I believe it would be prudent to meet with Unspeakable Caldwell, if only to satisfy some of her curiosity and prevent more forceful intervention from the Ministry. You think they'd try to take Umbra away from me? Harry asked, his voice rising in alarm. Umbra? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled slightly. You've named it. Well, yes. It needed a name. Indeed it did. Dumbledore nodded approvingly. To answer your question, I don't believe the Ministry could separate you from your shadow even if they tried. The magic binding you is far deeper than any containment spell they might devise. However, it would be best to avoid them trying at all. So I have to meet with this Unspeakable. I believe that would be wise. I will, of course, be present throughout the meeting, and you may bring Professor Lupin as well, if that would make you more comfortable. He has some expertise in unusual magical manifestations. Harry nodded slowly. When would this happen? This weekend. Saturday morning in my office. As Harry left, Dumbledore added, one more thing, Harry. It might be best if Umbra demonstrated only its most basic abilities during this meeting. No need to show the full extent of what it can do. The shadow, which had remained perfectly ordinary throughout the conversation, gave the slightest ripple of agreement. Harry immediately sought out Ron and Hermione to tell them about the upcoming meeting. This is bad, Hermione worried, pacing their usual secluded corner of the common room. The Department of Mysteries researches the most dangerous and powerful magic. If they're interested in Umbra, Dumbledore won't let them take it, Ron assured Harry. And like he said, they probably couldn't even if they tried. Umbra formed a shape like flexing muscles, clearly confident in its ability to resist capture. We should prepare, though, Hermione insisted. Figure out what you'll say, what Umbra should and shouldn't demonstrate. They spent the next few days strategizing. Umbra practiced appearing as normal as possible, with just enough unusual movement to satisfy curiosity without revealing its full capabilities. When Saturday arrived, Harry made his way to Dumbledore's office with Professor Lupin, who had been briefed on the situation. Just be honest about what Umbra is, Lupin advised. But perhaps not about everything it can do. Unspeakables tend to get overexcited about unique magical phenomena. Inside Dumbledore's office, Harry found not only the headmaster but also a witch he'd never seen before. She was tall and thin, with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun and sharp eyes that seemed to catalogue everything they saw. She wore plain black robes with a silver insignia, a triangle containing a circle and a line. Mr. Potter, she said, her voice surprisingly warm for her intimidating appearance. I'm Unspeakable Alara Caldwell. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Harry nodded cautiously, very aware of Umbra maintaining a perfectly ordinary appearance at his feet. Please, sit, Dumbledore gestured to a chair across from Caldwell. Tea. Once they were all settled with steaming cups, Caldwell got straight to the point. Mr. Potter, I've received reports about your shadow displaying unusual properties. Specifically, independent movement and what appears to be protective behavior. Would you mind demonstrating? Harry glanced at Dumbledore, who nodded slightly. Umbra, Harry said quietly. You can show yourself. The shadow rippled, then rose up from the floor beside Harry's chair, forming a vaguely humanoid shape about 3 feet tall. Caldwell's eyes widened with obvious excitement. Fascinating. And you call it Umbra? Harry corrected instinctively. Not it. Of course, Caldwell nodded, making notes on a small pad. Can Umbra understand us? In response, Umbra bowed formally to the Unspeakable. Remarkable. And when did this manifestation first occur? Harry explained briefly about Umbra's first appearance at the Dursleys, carefully omitting details about the extent of his relative's mistreatment. "So he, appeared in response to a perceived threat to your safety," Caldwell summarized. "Classic manifestation of protective magic. But the independent intelligence is unusual." She turned to Dumbledore. "You believe this is connected to Lily Potter's sacrificial protection?" "I do," Dumbledore confirmed. The timing of Umbra's manifestation, emerging as Harry approached the age for Hogwarts, suggests it may be linked to the magical awakening that typically occurs around that age. "Can he affect physical objects?" Caldwell asked, setting a quill on the desk. "Move things?" Harry nodded to Umbra, who stretched out a tendril to lift the quill, twirl it once, and set it back down. "Amazing," Caldwell breathed, scribbling notes furiously. "And distance? How far can he travel from you, Mr. Potter?" "About 20 feet, Harry answered, deliberately understating Umbra's range. "But it's uncomfortable for both of us beyond that." Caldwell asked several more questions about Umbra's abilities. Could it pass through solid objects? Yes, but only thin barriers. Could it communicate? Basic gestures only. Could it protect Harry from magical attacks? Sometimes, but not powerful spells. Throughout it all, Harry was careful to present Umbra as useful but limited, interesting but not revolutionary. He completely omitted Umbra's ability to travel miles delivering messages, its power to repel Dementors, or its deadly effectiveness against basilisks and Voldemort. Finally, Caldwell set down her quill. "Mr. Potter, I wonder if you would permit me to perform a simple diagnostic spell on Umbra? Just to better understand the magical composition." Harry hesitated. "What kind of spell?" "A harmless magical resonance test," Caldwell assured him. "It simply helps identify the type of magic at work. Completely painless and non-invasive." Dumbledore nodded slightly, indicating it was safe. "All right," Harry agreed reluctantly. Caldwell drew her wand and cast a complex spell that sent waves of silvery light toward Umbra. The shadow stood perfectly still as the light washed over it, but Harry felt a strange sensation, like someone gently prodding at his own magical core. The silvery light turned gold where it touched Umbra, then deep crimson, before finally settling on a bright, pulsing white. Caldwell gasped. "Incredible. I've never seen a protection manifestation register that strongly. The resonance is almost off the scale." "Meaning?" Lupin asked, speaking for the first time. "Meaning this is among the most powerful protective enchantments I've ever encountered," Caldwell explained, her professional demeanor slipping to reveal genuine awe. "And it's completely intertwined with Mr. Potter's own magical signature. They're essentially one entity in two forms." "As I suspected," Dumbledore said calmly. "Umbra is not a separate being that Harry created, but rather an extension of Harry himself, shaped by his mother's sacrifice." Caldwell was practically vibrating with excitement. "Mr. Potter, the research potential here is extraordinary. If you would consider spending some time at the Department of Mysteries, we could, I believe," Dumbledore interrupted gently, "that Harry's education takes priority over research, however fascinating that research might be." Caldwell collected herself with visible effort. Of course. Perhaps during the summer holidays." "I don't think so," Harry said firmly. "Umbra and I aren't laboratory specimens." "I understand your reluctance," Caldwell said, her tone becoming more persuasive. "But consider the benefits to wizard kind if we could understand this protection. It could save countless lives. Or be weaponized," Lupin observed quietly. A flash of something, annoyance. Frustration, crossed Caldwell's face before she smoothed it away. "The Department of Mysteries exists to understand magic, Professor Lupin, not exploit it." "Nevertheless," Dumbledore said with finality, "I believe this demonstration has provided you with valuable insights, unspeakable Caldwell. Harry has been very generous with his time." Recognizing dismissal when she heard it, Caldwell gathered her notes and stood. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Potter. If you ever change your mind about further research, please contact me." She handed Harry a small silver card. My direct flu address. After she left, Harry slumped in relief. That was intense. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. And I believe unspeakable Caldwell's interest may extend beyond pure academic curiosity. Umbra made an emphatic gesture of agreement, forming their signal for hidden agenda. You sense that too? Lupin asked the Shadow, looking impressed. Umbra's good at detecting threats, Harry explained. And she definitely felt threatening, somehow. Like she wasn't telling us everything. The Department of Mysteries operates according to its own rules, Dumbledore said carefully. Their research is not subject to the usual ministry oversight. It would be wise to be cautious in any further dealings with unspeakable Caldwell. Do you think she'll try something? Harry asked worriedly. I believe she will continue her interest in Umbra, Dumbledore replied. Whether that takes the form of simple observation or something more intrusive remains to be seen. As if on cue, Umbra formed their signal for being watched, eyes in the darkness. All three wizards immediately looked around the office. Dumbledore waved his wand in a complex pattern, and a small, silver device on a nearby shelf glowed briefly before emitting a puff of purple smoke. Ah, Dumbledore said, his voice hardening slightly. It seems unspeakable Caldwell left behind a little research tool. He plucked what looked like an ordinary paperweight from his desk and held it up. A monitoring charm, rather cleverly disguised. With a flick of his wand, the paperweight disintegrated into dust. I believe, Dumbledore said, brushing the dust from his fingers, that we should be even more cautious than I initially suggested. The next few weeks brought new worries. Harry noticed unfamiliar faces in Hogsmeade on the weekends he snuck into the village using his invisibility cloak. Twice, Umbra alerted him to being followed when he was walking alone through the castle corridors. It's like they're stalking you, Ron said grimly after Harry described the latest incident. They probably are, Hermione agreed. The Department of Mysteries doesn't give up easily from what I've read. Umbra had taken to patrolling around Harry at night, stretching to check windows and doorways for monitoring devices. The Shadow found and neutralized 3 more magical bugs in the Gryffindor common room alone. This is getting out of hand, Harry complained during one of their private strategy sessions. I can't even go to the bathroom without wondering if there's an unspeakable hiding in a stall. We need to talk to Sirius Black, Hermione said suddenly. Both boys stared at her. The escaped murderer who's supposedly trying to kill Harry? Ron clarified. That's Sirius Black. Think about it, Hermione insisted. Umbra identified the black dog as an animagus, and said it wasn't a threat to Harry. The Marauder's map shows Peter Pettigrew is alive, and Umbra thinks he's disguised as Scabbers. What if the whole story about Black betraying Harry's parents is wrong? But why would Black break into Gryffindor Tower with a knife if he wasn't after me? Harry asked, referring to the frightening incident a week earlier. Umbra made the rat shape again, then a stabbing motion. He was after Scabbers, Hermione translated. After Pettigrew. This is mental, Ron muttered. But, it kind of makes sense in a twisted way. The question is, how do we find Black to talk to him? Harry mused. The Shadow formed a shape like a dog, then pointed toward the Forbidden Forest. He's hiding in the forest. Harry guessed. Can you find him, Umbra? An enthusiastic nod. Hold on, Hermione protested. We can't just wander into the Forbidden Forest looking for an escaped convict. Even if he is innocent, he's been in Azkaban for 12 years. He might be unstable. I'll bring the invisibility cloak, Harry decided. And Umbra will protect us if anything goes wrong. Ron looked uncertain. Shouldn't we tell Dumbledore about Pettigrew first? Without proof? Harry shook his head. We need to hear Black's side of the story first. Then we'll go to Dumbledore. They planned their expedition for the following weekend. Using the Marauder's map to avoid detection, they slipped out of the castle under Harry's invisibility cloak and made their way to the edge of the forbidden forest. Once there, Harry nodded to Umbra. "Find him," he whispered. The shadow stretched away from them, flowing across the ground like spilled ink before disappearing into the trees. They waited in tense silence for nearly 10 minutes before Umbra returned, gesturing for them to follow. Deeper and deeper into the forest they went, guided by Umbra's silent directions. Finally, they reached a small cave hidden among the roots of an ancient tree. "Hello," Harry called cautiously. "Sirius Black. We want to talk to you." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a large black dog emerged from the cave, regarding them warily with intelligent eyes. "We know you're an animagus," Harry said. "And we think you might be innocent." The dog's ears perked up in obvious surprise. "My shadow friend identified you," Harry explained, gesturing to Umbra, which was hovering protectively at his side. "It also says Peter Pettigrew is alive, disguised as my friend's pet rat." The dog growled at the mention of Pettigrew, then with a shimmer, transformed into a gaunt, haggard man with matted black hair and hollow eyes. "Your shadow friend?" Black's voice was raspy from disuse. "What kind of magic is this?" "It's complicated," Harry said. "But Umbra can sense things, know things. It says you're not a threat to me." Black's eyes filled with tears. "I would never harm you, Harry. I'm your godfather. I was your father's best friend." "Then why does everyone think you betrayed my parents to Voldemort?" Harry asked directly. Black told them everything, how Pettigrew had been the real secret keeper, how he had betrayed the Potters, framed Black, and escaped by faking his death and living as a rat for 12 years. "I escaped Azkaban when I saw Pettigrew's picture in the newspaper," Black explained, showing them the clipping of the Weasleys in Egypt, with Scabbers clearly visible on Ron's shoulder. "I had to protect you, Harry. As long as Pettigrew lives, he's a danger to you. He could help Voldemort return. That's why you broke into Gryffindor Tower," Hermione realized. "You were trying to get to Scabbers." "But he escaped," Black growled. "The little rat always was good at running away." Throughout Black's explanation, Umbra remained close to Harry but showed no signs of considering the man a threat. In fact, the shadow seemed almost familiar with Black, occasionally stretching toward him in what looked like recognition. "Extraordinary," Black murmured, watching the shadow's movements. "It reminds me of, but that's impossible." "What?" Harry asked eagerly. "Your father had a similar ability, in a way," Black explained. "Not a living shadow, but, well, we were animagi, you see. Your father could transform into a stag. We called him Prongs." "The stag!" Harry exclaimed, looking at Umbra. "That's what you were trying to tell us." The shadow nodded vigorously, forming the stag shape again. "I was Padfoot," Black continued. "Pettigrew was Wormtail, a rat, appropriately enough. And Remus was Moony." "Professor Lupin?" Hermione gasped. "He's a marauder too." "And a werewolf," Black added. "That's why we became animagi, to keep him company during full moons." This revelation led to a long discussion about the marauders, Harry's parents, and the events that had led to their deaths. By the time they finished, the sun was setting. "We need to get back to the castle," Hermione said urgently. "And we need to tell Dumbledore everything." "I have a better idea," Black said. "Capture Pettigrew. With him alive, my innocence can be proven." "But how?" Ron asked. "Scabbers has disappeared." Umbra made a gesture indicating it could find the rat. "Umbra can track him," Harry translated. "It sensed him before." They agreed to meet again the following night, with Umbra searching for Pettigrew in the meantime. As they prepared to leave, Black transformed back into his dog form to escort them to the edge of the forest. Walking beside Padfoot, Harry felt a strange sense of connection, like finding a missing piece of his past. Umbra seemed to feel it too, flowing between Harry and the dog in a way that somehow linked them. Unknown to the group, their entire conversation had been observed. Unspeakable Caldwell, disillusioned and hidden among the trees, had followed them using a tracking charm she'd managed to place on Harry during their meeting in Dumbledore's office. She watched with calculating eyes as the living shadow guided the children and the animagus through the forest, noting how it flowed with purpose and intelligence far beyond what Potter had demonstrated in their meeting. Fascinating, she whispered to herself. Even more powerful than I suspected. Back at the castle, Harry and his friends went straight to Professor Lupin with their discovery. The defense teacher listened with growing amazement to their account. "You found Sirius?" he asked, voice shaking. "And he told you about Peter?" "It's true, isn't it?" Harry pressed. "Pettigrew was the secret keeper, not Black." Lupin sank into his chair, looking overwhelmed. "I never believed. I thought like everyone else. But if Peter is alive..." "Umbra confirmed it," Harry said. "It can identify threats, and it says Black isn't one but Pettigrew is." Lupin studied the shadow with new respect. "This shadow of yours is remarkable, Harry. It seems to have knowledge even you don't possess." "Dumbledore thinks it's connected to my mother's protection," Harry explained. "But lately, it's been acting like it knows things about my parents, about their friends." "Magical manifestations sometimes tap into deeper knowledge," Lupin mused. "Particularly those created by powerful love magic." They made plans to capture Pettigrew the following night, with Lupin's help. The professor would secure a space where the rat couldn't escape, and they would force him to reveal his human form. What they didn't plan for was unspeakable Caldwell's intervention. The next morning, Harry was summoned to Dumbledore's office again. There he found not only the headmaster but Minister Fudge, unspeakable Caldwell, and two stern-looking wizards in official ministry robes. "Mr. Potter," Fudge began without preamble, "grave concerns have been raised about this shadow entity you've been harboring." Harry felt his stomach drop. "What concerns?" "Unspeakable Caldwell has observed your shadow demonstrating abilities far beyond what you disclosed in your previous meeting," Fudge explained, looking uncomfortable. "Including helping you communicate with the escaped murderer Sirius Black." "You were spying on me?" Harry demanded, looking at Caldwell in outrage. "Monitoring a potentially dangerous magical phenomenon," she corrected smoothly. "And it's fortunate I was. Consorting with a known criminal is a serious offense, Mr. Potter." "Sirius Black is innocent," Harry protested. "Peter Pettigrew is alive, he's the one who betrayed my parents." "A convenient story," Caldwell said dismissively. "But the facts remain, your shadow has demonstrated extraordinary abilities that pose significant security concerns. The Department of Mysteries is hereby requesting that the entity be temporarily contained for study and evaluation." "Absolutely not," Dumbledore said firmly. "Harry's shadow is an extension of himself. Separating them would be like removing a limb." "With respect, Headmaster," one of the stern wizards interjected, "we have authorization from the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement." He produced an official-looking document. "If this shadow can track wanted criminals and potentially be used for espionage, it must be properly studied and regulated." "This is absurd," Dumbledore said, his voice hardening. "Harry is a child under my protection as headmaster. You have no authority to remove any part of him for study." While they argued, Harry felt Umbra stirring at his feet. The shadow was agitated, stretching slightly toward the door, making their signal for immediate escape needed. Harry subtly nodded his understanding. Whatever was happening, Umbra thought they needed to get out, fast. "Professor," Harry interrupted the heated debate, "may I use your bathroom?" Dumbledore, seeming to sense something in Harry's demeanor, nodded. "Of course. Through that door." As Harry stood, Caldwell moved to block his path. "I'll accompany you." "I hardly think that's appropriate," Dumbledore said coldly. "The boy deserves basic privacy." Reluctantly, Caldwell stepped aside. Harry walked quickly to the bathroom, closed the door, and leaned against it. "What is it?" he whispered to Umbra. "What's wrong?" The shadow stretched up the wall, forming a series of urgent gestures, Caldwell's face, then a cage, then a laboratory scene with what looked like dissection tools. Harry's blood ran cold. "She doesn't want to study you. She wants to experiment on you." Umbra nodded grimly, then pointed to Harry's wand, formed a door shape, and made their signal for quick action. "You want me to blast my way out of here?" Harry asked incredulously. The shadow shook its head, then mimicked Dumbledore's wand movements, suggesting the headmaster would help. "Right," Harry nodded. "But we need a distraction." Umbra pointed to itself, then spread out, demonstrating it could fill the entire room with darkness. "Perfect," Harry grinned. "On my signal." He flushed the toilet for effect, then opened the door and walked casually back into the office. Dumbledore and Caldwell were still arguing, with Fudge looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Minister," Harry said politely, "before anything happens, can I demonstrate what Umbra can actually do? So you understand what you're dealing with?" Fudge looked relieved at the interruption. "Certainly, my boy. That seems reasonable." "I advise against this," Caldwell said sharply. "The entity could attempt escape." "It's just a demonstration," Harry assured them. "Umbra, show them your basic form." The shadow rose up beside him, forming its standard humanoid shape. Harry could sense it gathering its strength, preparing. "As you can see, Umbra is perfectly controlled," Harry continued. "I can direct it to perform simple tasks, like, now." On his command, Umbra exploded into action, instantly engulfing the entire office in impenetrable darkness. Shouts of surprise and alarm came from the ministry officials. "Lumos Maxima!" Caldwell shouted, but her spell seemed to be absorbed by the darkness. In the pitch blackness, Harry felt Dumbledore's hand on his shoulder, guiding him. "This way," the headmaster whispered. "Quickly." They moved swiftly through the darkness, Umbra parting briefly to show them a door hidden behind a tapestry, a secret exit from the office Harry hadn't known existed. "Most impressive," Dumbledore murmured as they hurried down a narrow staircase. "Your shadow has grown considerably in power." "Where are we going?" Harry asked. "To find Sirius and Remus," Dumbledore replied. "If Pettigrew is indeed alive, we need to secure him as evidence immediately." Behind them, they could hear shouts as the ministry officials realized they had escaped. Umbra had maintained the darkness in the office, buying them precious time. Using the Marauder's map, which Harry had fortunately brought with him, they located Lupin in his office with Ron and Hermione. They rushed there, barricading the door behind them. "Albus!" Lupin exclaimed. "What's happening?" "The Ministry is attempting to confiscate Harry's shadow for study," Dumbledore explained grimly. "Led by an unspeakable with questionable motives." "Caldwell," Harry added. "She followed us to Sirius yesterday." "We need to find Pettigrew," Dumbledore said. "With him captured, we can prove Sirius's innocence and undermine Caldwell's authority in this matter." Umbra, which had rejoined them after escaping the office, made its rat-tracking gesture, then pointed toward the grounds. "Umbra can find him," Harry translated. "He's outside somewhere." "The Shrieking Shack," Lupin suggested. "It's where we were planning to corner him tonight anyway." "Sirius should meet us there," Hermione added. "He's been hiding nearby." They moved quickly, using secret passages to avoid being seen. The castle was already on alert, with professors and prefects searching for Harry on Fudge's orders. The tunnel beneath the Whomping Willow led them to the dilapidated Shrieking Shack, where Sirius was already waiting, pacing anxiously. "Harry," he exclaimed. "What's happened?" As they explained the situation, Umbra moved restlessly around the room, searching. Suddenly, the shadow stiffened, pointing to a hole in the baseboard. "He's here," Harry said. "Pettigrew is in the walls." With coordinated efforts, they sealed all exits from the room. Lupin and Sirius took positions near the suspected hiding place, while Umbra stretched into the wall cavity to flush out their quarry. A squealing, thrashing rat shot out of the hole, immediately transforming into a short, balding man as Lupin's spell hit it. Peter Pettigrew, very much alive, cowered before them. "My friends," he squeaked, eyes darting between Sirius and Lupin. "After all this time." "Save it, Peter," Sirius growled. "We know what you did. You betrayed Lily and James to Voldemort." What followed was a pathetic display of excuses and pleading from Pettigrew, confirming his guilt with every whining justification. Throughout his confession, Umbra loomed over him like an avenging shadow, clearly restraining itself from attack only at Harry's silent command. "You see, Albus," Lupin said grimly. "Sirius was innocent all along. Peter was the secret keeper." Indeed, Dumbledore's face was grave. A terrible miscarriage of justice that must be rectified immediately. They bound Pettigrew securely, preparing to take him to the castle, when the door burst open. Unspeakable Caldwell stood there, wand raised, flanked by the two Ministry wizards from earlier. "Step away from the prisoner," she ordered. "And Mr. Potter, your shadow is hereby confiscated under Emergency Decree 17 of the Department of Mysteries Charter." "On what grounds?" Dumbledore demanded, moving to stand between Harry and the unspeakable. "Unauthorized use of experimental magic, consorting with criminals, and obstruction of Ministry officials," Caldwell listed coldly. "Stand aside, Dumbledore." "I think not," the headmaster replied, his power suddenly palpable in the room. "Especially not when you seem more interested in acquiring Harry's shadow than in the living proof that Sirius Black is innocent." "Black's case is irrelevant to my investigation," Caldwell said dismissively. "Is it?" Dumbledore raised an eyebrow. "Or is it that a freed Sirius Black, as Harry's legal guardian, would have the authority to refuse your experiments on his godson's magical manifestation?" Caldwell's expression hardened. "That shadow is not a natural phenomenon. It's a living weapon, and the Department of Mysteries has jurisdiction over such artifacts." "Umbra is not an artifact," Harry protested. "He's part of me. A part that can hunt, track, and neutralize threats," Caldwell countered. "Imagine an army of such shadows, trained to eliminate enemies of the Ministry." "So that's it," Sirius said in disgust. "You want to weaponize a child's protective magic." "For the greater good," Caldwell insisted. "With proper study, we could replicate this effect, create defensive capabilities beyond anything we currently possess." Umbra was practically vibrating with rage, darkness pooling around Harry's feet. He could feel the shadow's desire to attack, to eliminate the threat Caldwell posed. "No," Harry whispered to it. "Not that way." The shadow reluctantly held back, though tendrils of darkness continued to swirl aggressively. "You cannot take my shadow by force," Harry told Caldwell firmly. "You couldn't even if you tried. Umbra exists because of my mother's love and sacrifice, the most powerful magic there is. You can't contain that in a laboratory." "We'll see about that," Caldwell raised her wand. "Separatio Umbra." A jet of silvery light shot toward Harry. Before anyone could react, Umbra rose up, absorbing the spell entirely. But instead of weakening, the shadow seemed to grow stronger, feeding on the magical energy aimed at it. Umbra expanded dramatically, filling the room with darkness once more. But this time, the darkness was selective. Caldwell and her associates were engulfed, while Harry, Dumbledore, Sirius, Lupin, Ron, and Hermione remained in a pocket of light. From within the darkness came panicked shouts and the sounds of people stumbling blindly. Caldwell's voice rose above the others, "Release us immediately. This is assault on Ministry officials." "I believe," Dumbledore said calmly, "that Harry's shadow is demonstrating why your plan was fundamentally flawed, unspeakable Caldwell. You cannot contain what you do not understand." After a moment, Harry nodded to Umbra, and the shadow reluctantly receded, revealing the three ministry officials huddled together, shaken but unharmed. That, Harry said pointedly, was Umbra being restrained. If he wanted to hurt you, you wouldn't be standing right now. Ask Professor Quirrell. Oh wait, you can't, because he tried to kill me, and Umbra stopped him. The cold clarity of Harry's statement hung in the air. Dumbledore broke the silence. I believe we have several matters to address. First, the innocence of Sirius Black, as evidenced by the very much alive Peter Pettigrew. Second, the inappropriate actions of the Department of Mysteries in attempting to confiscate part of a minor's magical being. And third, the future safety of Harry Potter, who has now demonstrated why tampering with his protection would be unwise. Caldwell looked between the bound Pettigrew and the still agitated Umbra, clearly calculating her options. This isn't over, she said finally. That shadow is unlike anything we've seen before. It needs to be studied. Perhaps, Dumbledore acknowledged, but with Harry's full consent and under conditions he approves. Not as a laboratory specimen to be dissected. And as his godfather, Sirius added fiercely, I'll be having a say in that as well. The standoff might have continued, but Minister Fudge himself arrived, puffing from the climb through the tunnel. What in Merlin's name is going on here? He demanded, then stopped short at the sight of Pettigrew. Is that, but he's supposed to be dead. Minister, Dumbledore said gravely, I believe you're witnessing the resolution of a 12-year-old miscarriage of justice. Perhaps we should continue this discussion at the castle, where statements can be properly taken. The aftermath unfolded with remarkable speed. Pettigrew's capture and confession exonerated Sirius completely. The evidence of Caldwell's unauthorized surveillance and attempted confiscation of Umbra led to her suspension pending investigation. Most importantly for Harry, the Ministry formally acknowledged that his shadow was an integral part of his being, protected under magical person statutes that prevented forcible separation. 3 days later, Harry sat in Dumbledore's office, repaired after Umbra's darkness explosion, discussing the future. Sirius's name has been cleared, as you know, Dumbledore explained. Once he's recovered sufficiently from his Azkaban ordeal, he'll be able to take guardianship of you, if that's what you both wish. It is, Harry confirmed enthusiastically. Umbra made a happy swirl at his feet. I must caution you, however, Dumbledore continued more seriously. While unspeakable Caldwell has been disciplined, her interest in Umbra is unlikely to fade. There will be others who see the potential in your unique protection. You mean people who want to weaponize it, Harry said bluntly. Precisely. The demonstration of Umbra's power against Caldwell's magic was impressive. Perhaps too impressive. Umbra shifted uncomfortably, seeming almost embarrassed by the observation. It was protecting me, Harry defended. Of course, Dumbledore agreed. That is his primary function. But as Umbra grows in power and awareness, you both face new challenges. The question of when and how to use such abilities becomes increasingly complex. Harry considered this. You think Umbra could become dangerous? I think any power can be dangerous, Harry. Even love, which fuels your shadow, can lead to actions that might later be regretted if wielded without restraint. Umbra formed a question mark, clearly following the conversation closely. I believe, Dumbledore continued, addressing the shadow directly, that you face the same challenge Harry does, learning when protection becomes aggression, when defense becomes attack. It is not always a clear line. The shadow nodded solemnly. This brings me to another matter, Dumbledore said. The ancient magic that created Umbra, your mother's sacrifice, appears to have created something beyond even what I initially understood. Umbra isn't simply protection, he appears to be developing a distinct consciousness, albeit one intrinsically linked to yours, Harry. Is that normal? Harry asked uncertainly. Normal? No. But neither is surviving the killing curse. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. I believe Umbra represents an unprecedented magical development, a sentient extension of sacrificial protection, evolving in response to the threats you face. You think Umbra is evolving because of the danger I keep finding myself in? Or perhaps the danger finds you because of what both you and Umbra represent, a fundamental challenge to those who wield dark magic. Dumbledore leaned forward. Consider, Voldemort's power was broken by your mother's sacrifice. That same protection now manifests as Umbra, growing stronger with each confrontation. It is, in essence, the antithesis to Voldemort's power. Umbra straightened at this, seeming to stand taller. Which brings me to my final point, Dumbledore said gravely. I believe Voldemort will return, Harry. The diary that possessed Ginny Weasley was more than a memory, it was a piece of his soul, preserved to enable his eventual resurrection. And when he returns? Harry asked quietly. When he returns, both you and Umbra will be primary targets. Not just because of your history, but because together, you represent the magic that defeated him, love made manifest, protection given form. Umbra moved to Harry's side, forming a distinctly protective stance. We'll be ready, Harry said with more confidence than he felt. I believe you will, Dumbledore agreed. Especially if you and Umbra continue to grow together, rather than separately. That, I think, is the key. Umbra is most powerful not when acting independently, but when your powers are in harmony. Harry looked at his shadow friend, which had been with him through so much already. We're already pretty good together. Indeed you are, Dumbledore smiled. And that partnership, that harmony of purpose, may well be what saves us all in the dark days that I fear lie ahead. The end of term came with unexpected joy for Harry. For the first time in his life, he wouldn't be returning to the Dursleys. Sirius, though still recovering from his ordeal, had secured a small cottage where they would live together once he completed his treatment at St. Mungo's. On the Hogwarts Express heading back to London, Harry, Ron, and Hermione discussed the incredible events of the year. I still can't believe Scabbers was Peter Pettigrew all along, Ron said, shaking his head. I let him sleep in my bed. At least now Sirius is free, Hermione pointed out. And Harry doesn't have to go back to those awful Dursleys. All thanks to Umbra, really, Harry said, as the shadow stretched comfortably across the compartment floor. If it hadn't identified Pettigrew and Black, none of this would have happened. Umbra made a modest gesture, then formed a shape that encompassed all three of them plus itself, a team. We did it together, Harry agreed, understanding the shadow's message. That's what Dumbledore meant about harmony. As the countryside flew by, Harry reflected on how much had changed since Umbra first appeared in his cupboard under the stairs. The shadow had begun as simple protection, a manifestation of his desperate need for safety. Now it was something more, a partner, a friend, a connection to his parents and their sacrifice. Umbra had grown alongside him, developing abilities and awareness that sometimes surprised even Harry. But through it all, their bond remained unbreakable. Whatever changes came, whatever threats emerged, they would face them together, the boy who lived and the shadow born of love. Do you ever wonder, Hermione asked suddenly, what might have happened if Umbra hadn't appeared? If your accidental magic had manifested differently? Harry looked down at the shadow stretched across his feet, rippling slightly with the motion of the train. I try not to think about it, he admitted. Before Umbra, I was alone. Completely alone. He smiled as the shadow reached up to touch his hand reassuringly. Now I never am. You've got us too, mate, Ron reminded him. And soon you'll have Sirius, Hermione added. I know, Harry nodded gratefully. But Umbra was my first friend. The first one who was completely on my side, no matter what. The shadow formed a heart shape, then pointed to Harry. Yeah, Harry agreed softly. I love you too, Umbra. As the Hogwarts Express sped toward London and the uncertain future that awaited them, Harry felt a strange peace settle over him. Whatever came next, Voldemort's return, the Ministry's continued interest in Umbra, the challenges of living with his godfather, he wasn't facing it alone. He had friends beside him and a shadow behind him, ready to eliminate any threat that dared approach. It wasn't a normal life by any means, but for Harry Potter, it was finally a life worth living. The shadow of his mother's love had become his strongest ally, his fiercest protector, and his closest companion. From darkness had come light. From tragedy, triumph. From a desperate wish for safety, a sentient shadow that would change the wizarding world forever. And as the train rounded the final bend toward King's Cross Station, Umbra stretched up to form one final shape, a lightning bolt transforming into a phoenix rising from the ashes. A promise for the future. A reminder of the past. And a bond that would never be broken. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.